Heads were sent flying like wheat. In a flash, Jian Wushuang had killed nearly 10 great divine masters from the four forces. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang dashed out again. Run, run, run! The remaining great divine masters from the four forces were scared out of their wits. When they saw Jian Wushuang charging out again, they did not hesitate and began to run frantically. Everyone was running, including the Life and Death Tower Master, the Dongfang Family Master, and the East God, the three-peak Great Divine Masters. They knew very well that Jian Wushuang could kill Ba Xiong with one strike, and he could also kill them with one strike. If they did not flee now, they would all die. Whoosh! 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 A large number of people were frantically fleeing in all directions. Despite the suppression of the realm and the restriction of the divine power sea, Jian Wushuang was able to catch up with very few of them. However, his eyes had long been fixed on one person. It was the East God. The divine demon sect has suffered heavy losses because of our sword league. The East God hates me to the bone. We can't let this potential threat escape. Jian Wushuang sneered. With a thought, the realm that had covered the entire battlefield rumbled. It was supposed to oppress all the experts of the four forces. But in this battle, the great domain was oppressing the East God alone. What? Under the pressure of the great domain, the already heavily injured East God was once again suppressed. His strength was greatly reduced and his speed was greatly reduced. Jian Wushuang only made a simple charge forward, and he was already beside the East God. Then, a sword light flashed. No! The East God let out a hysterical roar, but the roar gradually disappeared. His eyes dimmed, and his body began to fall down weakly. After killing the East God, Jian Wushuang did not chase after the other experts who had fled. Instead, he let them escape the battlefield. In just a moment, all the experts who had survived the four forces had fled. Is it over? Jian Wushuang looked at the battlefield that had completely calmed down and let out a sigh of relief. Then, the divine power sea that had filled the battlefield, as well as the techniques of the four realms, were slowly withdrawn. The 30,000-meter-tall Golden Emperor behind him also slowly disappeared. The mountain river map was also withdrawn and turned into a golden light that entered his divine body again. All means had stopped. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was feeling the divine power in his body. I've used up 50% of my divine power? Even Jian Wushuang was shocked when he saw that there was only 50% of his divine power left. One had to know that his divine power was extremely vast. Although it could not be said to be endless, the amount was indeed enough to scare people to death. In an ordinary fierce battle, even if he had to fight for a long time, his divine power would be very limited. Under normal circumstances, it would be very rare for him to use more than 10% of his divine power. But in this battle, he had used up 50% of his battle strength and half of it. Jian Wushuang could not help but exclaim that he had really put in a lot of effort in this battle. The many secret skills that he had used, whether it was the 7-star secret skill, the divine punishment skill, or the 9 luminary star armor, all required a tremendous amount of divine power. He had used a lot of divine power just to use these 3 secret skills. He had been trying his best to maintain the 4 realms since the beginning of the battle. Each of the 4 realms consumed a lot of divine power. However, he had been using them from the beginning of the battle until the end. After all, an extremely long time had passed. As for the mountain and river map, it was extremely difficult to use a supreme treasure like it. An ordinary peak divine master could only use the sword principal world of the 1,000 treasures great world for a short period of time. His divine power might not be able to withstand it, but Jian Wushuang had been using it for a very long time. Moreover, he used the divine emperor seal and the true emperor seal of the 9 region seal. Such a method consumed a huge amount of divine power. However, although these secret skills consumed a huge amount of divine power, it was still acceptable for Jian Wushuang's massive divine power. What really consumed him was the final burst of divine power C. The burst of divine power was to isolate the battlefield between the 2 sides and prevent further damage to the experts of the Red Stone Castle and the Sword League. Although this move did not last long, it consumed a lot of divine power when the massive divine power kept surging. Only Jian Wushuang dared to play like this. If it were anyone else, even the top immortal saint would not be able to do this. During the time when the divine power sea erupted, he had used up 30% of his divine power, and the other 20% was consumed by his various secret skills. In total, he had only used up 50% of his divine power. Ever since I broke through to the divine devil realm and became a perfect chaotic creature, it's the first time I've used up so much divine power, Jian Wushuang muttered. A perfect chaotic creature has the most perfect immortal body, which requires divine power to recover. For other cultivators, the soul is the root, but for me, divine power is the most important thing. As long as I don't use up my divine power, no one can kill me. This time, I've used up too much divine power. I'll take it easy in the future. Unless it's really a life or death situation, I can only use 30% of my divine power. The remaining 70% will be used to save my life, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. While he was pondering, many experts from the Red Stone Castle and the Sword League had surrounded him. These experts were shocked and could not calm down for a long time. They looked at Jian Wushuang with respect and admiration. Their camp was at an absolute disadvantage in this battle. Could even be said that there was no room for them to fight back. At the beginning of the battle, almost everyone thought that their camp would lose this battle. It was just a question of whether they would lose too miserably. But who would have thought that this Sword Union chief, Jian Yi, who was merely emitting the aura of a senior great deity, would use lightning-fast methods to first defeat and heavily injure East God. Then, he would fight against Palace Master Nanwu alone. After a fierce battle, he killed Palace Master Nanwu directly. In the end, he single-handedly fought against all the experts from the Four Forces camps, and in the end, he swept through all the experts from the Four Forces camps, killing them until the Four Forces camps could only flee frantically. In this battle, he had killed 3 peak great deities one after another, including Palace Master Nanwu, who was the strongest. It could be said that he had single-handedly turned the tables on the situation that he was bound to lose. Jenny Sewer stared at Jian Wushuang with a complicated look. Why? Don't you recognize me? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. No, I just didn't expect you to be so strong. Sewer exclaimed in surprise. The surrounding experts nodded in unison. Indeed, Jian Wushuang's combat strength was too strong. He had killed Palace Master Nanwu and swept through all the experts of the allied forces. This strength was not something an ordinary great divine master could have. Only the legendary invincible divine master could have such a skill. As for Jian Wushuang, even if he was not as strong as the real invincible divine master, he was very close. But don't forget, the divine power aura emitted by Jian Wushuang was only that of a senior great divine master. A senior great divine master had almost the combat strength of an invincible divine master. His secret skills are very impressive. At the same time, he also has countless trump cards. Sewer praised in her heart. In this battle, Jian Wushuang had gone all out. He had indeed revealed too many tricks and trump cards. All kinds of tricks and trump cards were emerging one after another, which amazed many experts present. Many experts present were now curious about what kind of experience Jian Wushuang had had, or what kind of amazing opportunities he had obtained. They all knew that Jian Wushuang could not have had so many tricks and trump cards without a great opportunity. His combat strength would never have been so strong. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly in his heart when he noticed the strange gazes around him. After a long while, Jian Wushuang exhaled and said, "In any case, today's battle is finally over." Yes, it's over. The experts around them also heaved a sigh of relief, especially the remaining great divine masters of Sewer's camp, who were still smiling in surprise. We've won. We've won this battle. Not only have we won the internal battle within Crimson Rock Castle, we've also defeated the allied forces of the 4 great powers. Although Crimson Rock Castle has suffered heavy losses in this battle and many great divine paragons have fallen, it won't be long before we can reorganize and regroup. After today's battle, our Crimson Rock Castle will definitely regain its prestige from many years ago. The Nangong Wugong, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family will once again submit to our Crimson Rock Castle. This is too good. Voices filled with pleasant surprise reverberated in the air. Beside them, Yun Shan and his two remaining high divine paragons had extremely complicated expressions on their faces. It was indeed gratifying that the alliance of the four great powers had been defeated. However, the faction they belonged to had similarly been defeated by Insuer. Yun Shan. Insuer's voice rang out. She gave Yun Shan a deep look. After a long while, she continued, "The reason why I suddenly attacked you before was because I sensed that Great Divine God Tianmu had close contact with the Nangong Wugong. Great Divine God Tianmu was your subordinate and also your confidant. I subconsciously thought that you had fallen and wanted to collude with the Nangong Wugong to harm the Redstone Castle. I didn't expect that Great Divine God Tianmu had schemed against you. This time, I have misunderstood you. I apologize." Insuer's voice was extremely sincere. For so many years, she and Yun Shan had been fighting in the open and in the dark, and they were extremely fierce. But no matter how much they fought, Insuer recognized Yun Shan's strength and ability. In addition, Yun Shan had founded Crimson Rock Castle with Redstone Saint, and they had fought together to conquer the world. Crimson Rock Saint had 50% of the credit for Crimson Rock Fort's complete control of a realm, while Yun Shan had at least 30%. Insuer had never denied Yun Shan's achievements. Therefore, she still had a trace of respect for Yun Shan from the bottom of her heart. Previously, if she hadn't been schemed by Great Divine God Tianmu and thought that Yun Shan had colluded with the South Wugong, she would never have directly launched a great war against Yun Shan in this manner. And just now, after being ambushed by her camp and being heavily injured, Yun Shan was still able to put the overall situation first and take the initiative to join hands with her to fight against the allied forces of the four major forces. This made Insuer extremely gratified and moved. So now that the Great War had ended, Insuer also took the initiative to apologize to Yun Shan. "This matter, this old man does not know people well. Being schemed against by others is also this old man's own fault." Yun Shan said, "The winner takes all. This battle, this old man has lost. From today onwards, the Crimson Rock Castle will absolutely respect you, Lord Castle Lord. If Lord Castle Lord has any demolition in the future, I, Yun Shan, will not say a word of no." Yun Shan's voice was equally sincere. Previously, the reason why he was unconvinced of Insuer and fought with her was because he doubted her methods. He believed that Insuer lacked experience and wisdom, so she was not suitable to control this huge red stone castle. However, after all these years of competition, Yun Shan had witnessed Insuer's growth and her methods. Especially in this battle, he was completely convinced. The strength that Insuer had accumulated in a short period of time, and the fact that she had secretly recruited several other small factions, as well as bribed the experts from the White Cloud Mansion, the Demon Sealing Hall, and the Eclipse Gate, these three first-rate forces as backup plans. Especially what shocked him was the relationship between Insuer and the Sword Union. He had never expected that the Sword Union and Insuer would actually have a cooperative relationship from the very beginning. Both sides had long reached an agreement, and in this battle all sorts of changes were made. Insuer's methods had completely exceeded his expectations. He was also completely convinced by Insuer, not only in terms of strength but also in terms of intelligence and tactics. He no longer had any doubts. Naturally, he was now willing to serve Insuer as his master. And Yun Shan's change in attitude made Insuer immediately overjoyed. "Uncle Yun Shan, from today onwards, you will still be the Grand Elder of our Crimson Rock Castle. In Crimson Rock Castle, other than me, you will be the most respected," Insuer said hurriedly. "Hee. It's rare for Suer to still be willing to call me uncle." Yun Shan also revealed a trace of a smile. When the surrounding people saw this, they all heaved a sigh of relief. It was very obvious that Insuer and Yun Shan had completely reconciled. The past struggles, even the great battle this time, had already become the clouds of the past. And this was the best ending for Crimson Rock Castle. Well, although we won this battle, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Not only did many great divine masters die, but even those who survived were injured and consumed too much of each other's divine power. We should go back and recover our injuries and divine power. After we recover, we will think of ways to deal with those top forces, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Yes, restore good condition first. Then go to those few families to settle accounts properly. Yin Suer's voice was ice-cold. After the battle was over, Yin Suer, Yun Shan, and the others returned to Crimson Rock Castle, while Jian Wushuang returned to the Sword Union with the experts of the Sword Union. After they returned, the experts began to recover their injuries and divine power. At the same time, the result of the earth-shaking battle, which affected the entire situation of the Pilsun sacred world, spread throughout the entire Pilsun continent. They won. Yin Suer's camp actually won. First, they defeated the Yunshan camp, then the Blood Thunder King camp, and finally, they clashed with the allied forces of the four major forces. They defeated the allied forces of the four major forces head-on, and even Palace Master Nan Wu died. Palace Master Nan Wu died? How is this possible? Could it be that the Undying Sage personally took action? After hearing this news, the entire Pil Sun continent was in a state of shock. Palace Master Nan Wu had been invincible on the Pil Sun continent for too long. The cultivators on the Pil Sun continent couldn't believe that Palace Master Nan Wu would actually die. If he really was going to die, most people thought that the Undying Sage personally took action. However, news quickly spread that the one who killed Palace Master Nan Wu wasn't the Undying Sage, but a senior Great Divine Venerable. This senior Great Divine Master was Su Han, the Master of the Sword League. Su Han also had another name, Sword One. Sword One was a name that many people on the Pilsun continent were familiar with. When the Divine Demon Sect and the Tower of Life and Death had wanted to kill Jian Wushuang, they had placed a bounty on Jian Wushuang in the entire Pilsun sacred world and offered a sky-high price. At that time, Jian Yi was said to be only an Earth God Master. However, in less than 100 years, Jian Yi had established a huge sword league with Su Han's identity. Now, Jian Yi had killed Palace Master Nan Wu directly. The news was very clear. Jian Yi had killed Palace Master Nan Wu in a fair one-on-one battle. He had even killed the East God and Ba Xiong, who had reached the level of a peak Great God Master. He had killed 3 peak Great Divine Paragons in one go. This battle record shocked everyone. And since Palace Head Nan Wu had been killed by Sword One, it was only natural that Sword One would replace Palace Head Nan Wu and become the new strongest on the Pil Sun continent. And because of this, the experts on the Pil Sun continent were even more shocked. A high-level Great Divine Paragon actually became the strongest expert on the Pil Sun continent? Alliance Master Su Han, no, it's Jian Yi. He's really amazing. Genius, Alliance Master Su Han is definitely a real genius. I'm afraid there has never been such a genius in the Pil Sun sacred world since the creation of Crimson Rock Saint. Countless people were amazed. They were amazed by Jian Wushuang's strength and talent. Of course, many people were also talking about the battle. Good man. With the help of the Sword Union, Yin Suer has gathered the Cloud Mountain sect and defeated the Blood Thunder King sect. Even the Blood Thunder King died, and the Red Stone Castle fell into his hands. The 4 alliances formed by Palace Master Nan Wu, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Demon Sect, and the Dongfang family were also defeated. From today onwards, no one in the Pil Sun continent and the entire Pil Sun holy world can stop the Red Stone Castle. If nothing goes wrong, Crimson Rock Castle will probably regain its former dominance and control over the sacred Pil Sun world. Yeah, that's probably the case. Oh right, I heard that even external forces are participating in this battle. I think it's called the Heavenly Void Temple. I wonder what its background is. Heavenly Void Temple? That's the overlord of the Heavenly Void world. I heard that the Undying Sage is personally overseeing it. All sorts of discussions spread across the Pil Sun continent. However, these discussions ultimately came down to 3 points. First, Crimson Rock Castle would once again regain complete control over the Pil Sun sacred world. Second, the most powerful expert of the Pil Sun continent had changed masters. The name Sword One had already resounded throughout every corner of the Pil Sun continent. In terms of fame and prestige, it had completely surpassed that of Palace Master Nan Wu. After all, Palace Master Nanwu had already reached the peak of the great reverent god realm. The chances of becoming an invincible divine lord were slim. The only possibility was to directly break through and become an undying sage. However, the difficulty was also incomparably difficult. However, Sword One was different. Sword One's battle prowess was already so tyrannical just because he was a high-level great divine lord. Once he broke through and reached the peak of the great divine lord realm in the future, he would definitely become even more terrifying. He would definitely become an invincible divine lord. The third point was that the experts from all the factions on the Pill Sun continent knew that if the Redstone Castle survived this battle, then the four top factions that formed the Alliance army would be in trouble. Everyone knew that the Red Stone Castle would definitely settle their scores later. In the Dark Palace. This palace did not have the slightest bit of light, nor did it have any decorations. There was only a huge round table in the middle. This round table was where the leaders of the four top forces usually gathered. But now, the leaders of the four top forces, Palace Master Nanwu and East God, had been killed. Only the Life and Death Tower Master and the Dongfang family head were still sitting there. There were also two figures next to them. But they were a senior great deity from the Nanwu Palace and the Divine Demon Sect. At this moment, the four of them were gathered here, and all of their faces were extremely gloomy. What should we do? The Dongfang family head was the first to speak, but his voice was abnormally low. However, when they heard these three words, the three people next to him were all silent. After a long while, the Life and Death Tower Lord spoke again. I've already received news that the people of Crimson Rock Castle and the people of the Sword Union have already returned to their respective lairs. However, when they returned, they didn't just stop there. It was because the losses from the previous Great War were too great, and the divine powers of many experts were almost exhausted. They only returned to temporarily recover their states and replenish their divine powers. Once their states recover to the peak, Sewer will definitely make a move against our four families. This is without a doubt. If Sewer's family is the only one here, there's nothing to worry about. Crimson Rock Castle just went through a huge battle, and there aren't many experts left. The allied forces of the four powers can definitely fight them head-on, and our chances of winning are still very high. But the key point is, if Sewer wants to make a move, she'll definitely call the Sword Alliance and that Sword One. Sword One. Upon hearing this name, the Dongfang clan head and the two senior great divine venerables beside him trembled, unable to calm down for a long time. This name was simply a nightmare to them now. They weren't afraid of Crimson Rock Castle, nor were they afraid of the Sword Alliance, but they were afraid of Sword One. In the previous battle, it was Sword One who had single-handedly turned the tides and completely changed the situation. Although he was only one person, his strength had completely exceeded their imagination. It was no exaggeration to say that Sword One alone was enough to completely slaughter their alliance army. That was because they were too afraid of Sword One. If Jian Yi were to appear personally, the alliance army of the four forces would have no chance of resisting. We would only be slaughtered by him easily. Therefore, we only have two options now. First, we should take advantage of the fact that Sewer and the Sword Alliance have yet to make a move and bring their own resources and subordinates to escape from the Pill Sun continent. We might even escape to another sacred world. The Dongfang clan head said in a low voice. Escape from the Pill Sun continent? The Life and Death Tower Master's expression changed, but he immediately shook his head. The Life and Death Tower has many trump cards. All of them are on the Pill Sun continent. How can we take them away in such a short time? Not to mention that the Crimson Rock Castle will definitely think of this in advance and take precautions. Even if we don't take any trump cards with us, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave the Pill Sun sacred world so easily. Indeed, under the current situation, it's already very difficult for us to retreat safely. Since that's the case, there's only one way left. We have to compromise, the Dongfang family head said. Compromise? How do we compromise? The Life and Death Tower head looked over. Our four great factions have deep foundations on the Pill Sun continent, and our influence is incomparably great. If the Crimson Rock Castle wants to uproot us, it definitely won't be so easy. Moreover, even if they really have the ability, they probably won't do so. After all, they have to think for the entire Pil Sun Sacred World and the situation of the Pil Sun Sacred World in the Golden Crow 9 realms. Therefore, as long as we are willing to compromise, Sewer will most likely not continue attacking us. The Dongfang family head said. We just have to compromise? The senior great deity from the Fiend God sect immediately asked. Of course it's not that simple. The Dongfang family patriarch's face was cold. Right now, the four of us are fish on the chopping block. We are practically at the mercy of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. In such a situation, if we want to compromise, we have to be prepared to pay a huge price. The price might even be so great that we cannot accept it. But if we want to survive on the Pil Sun continent, we have no choice but to accept it. Although I don't know what the three of you are thinking, I have already made up my mind. Regardless of what conditions Sewer will come up with, even if it means reducing the overall strength of our Dongfang family by 70%, as long as we can continue to stay on the Pil Sun continent and gain a foothold, our Dongfang family will be able to accept it, the Dongfang family head said. Hearing these words, the Life and Death Tower Lord and the two senior great divine paragons had extremely solemn expressions on their faces. The Dongfang family was the most ancient family clan in the Pil Sun continent. Their foundations were so deep that other than the Nangong Wugong, the Life and Death Tower could not compare to the Fiend God sect. But now, the Dongfang family lord had said that he would rather lose 70% of his strength and was willing to compromise. What sort of great determination was this? I understand. All of you should disperse. It's fine as long as you are mentally prepared. The Life and Death Tower Lord waved his hand. Very quickly, the four figures slowly dispersed. Time flashed by. It had been 3 months since the end of the great battle. During these 3 months, whether it was Crimson Rock Castle or the Sword Alliance, they were all incomparably calm on the surface. However, in the dark, Sewer had already ordered people to keep a close eye on the movements of the four top forces. Once the four top forces made any movements, the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union would immediately take action. Fortunately, the four top forces did not make any big movements during the past 3 months. They also did not want to give up their foundations. Many experts showed no signs of fleeing. After 3 months, the injuries and divine power of the experts of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union had mostly recovered. Even those who were seriously injured had recovered 60 to 70% of their strength. As for full recovery, it was not something that could be completed in just 3 months. Not to mention 3 months, even 3 years or 30 years might not be enough to completely recover. Although they had not fully recovered their strength, it did not affect the next steps of the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. In the vast void, the experts of the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union gathered together again. 3 months have passed. Now we can go to the four top forces to settle the score. Sewer's expression was cold. Lord Zhen Wushuang was about to speak. Mr. Jenny, please stop calling me Lord. I can't afford it. If you don't mind, you can just call me by my name or Sewer. Sewer said, looking extremely humble. In front of her, Zhen Wushuang was indeed just a little guy. His strength was like an ant, so she could not care less about him. At that time, she felt at ease when Zhen Wushuang called her Lord. But now, Zhen Wushuang's strength far exceeded her, and he controlled the huge Sword League. His strength and power were not weaker than hers. The battle 3 months ago was saved by Zhen Wushuang alone. Under such circumstances, how could she dare to put on airs in front of Zhen Wushuang, let alone allow Zhen Wushuang to call her Lord? Castle Lord Sewer. Zhen Wushuang smiled slightly. I must deal with the four top forces, but I don't know how to deal with them. Should I destroy them all or? Sewer's eyes darkened slightly. After thinking for a long time, she said, not all. If possible, it's best if none of them are destroyed. Oh! Zhen Wushuang was surprised. Mr. Jenny, you've only been wandering in the Pil Sun Sacred World, so you don't know much about the outside world. Since my father died, our strength has been greatly reduced. Over the years, our Crimson Rock Castle has been engaged in civil war. This war may look like a great victory for our Crimson Rock Castle, but in fact, We've lost a lot of experts. To put it bluntly, the current situation of the Pill Sun Sacred World isn't looking good. In the Golden Crow 9 realms, our Pill Sun Sacred World is definitely the weakest. In fact, we are already extremely weak. Under such circumstances, we should save as much as we can from unnecessary battles. For example, the top 4 powers like the Nan Wu Palace, the Tower of Life and Death, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family. Although they don't belong to our Crimson Rock Castle, they still belong to the Pill Sun Sacred World. If we were to wipe out all 4 of these top powers in one go, not only would our Crimson Rock Castle lose a portion of our experts, but our Pill Sun Sacred World's battle prowess would also be further weakened. If we are truly weakened to the extreme, then we will be under too much pressure from the outside world. For example, the appearance of the Heavenly Void Temple in this battle is already a sign. The Heavenly Void Temple has openly attacked our Crimson Rock Castle this time. This has never happened before. Xianxia frowned tightly, but her heart was incomparably solemn. After that battle, the internal conflict between Crimson Rock Castle and the Pill Sun Sacred World could be resolved, but the pressure from the outside world that the Pill Sun Sacred World was weak was very frightening. In other words, do you want the 4 top forces to submit? Jian Wushuang asked. Not only do you want them to submit, but you also need to make them pay a huge price and teach them a big lesson. You can squeeze their resources and the many territories and industries they control. In addition, we have to restrict their experts. Coincidentally, there are too many experts who have fallen during the war in our Crimson Rock Castle, especially the Crimson Rock Legion. They don't even have a commander at the level of a great divine master. Therefore, every force has to send some great divine masters to serve our Crimson Rock Castle so that we can allow them to continue living in the Pill Sun Sacred World. Xianxia said coldly. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. He already knew what Xianxia meant. Let's go directly to the 4 top forces. The Divine Demon Sect should be the weakest now, and the East God has been killed. In terms of battle strength, they are not much stronger than a first-rate force. However, they still have their heritage. How about we trouble Elder Tong of the Sword Union to visit the Divine Demon Sect? Xianxia said. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded. As for Elder Tong, he did not have any objections. Palace Master Nan Wu's greatest reliance has also fallen. I guess Nan Wu Palace is now a pile of loose sand. Uncle Yunshan, I'll let you take some people to go there in person. Xianxia said. Yes. Yunshan nodded slightly. The remaining Life and Death Tower and Dongfang family still have their strongest battle strength, and their overall strength is still well preserved. Therefore, you and I will go to them in person. But, which one do you choose, Mr. Jianyi? Xianxia looked at Jian Wushuang. Leave the Life and Death Tower to me, Jian Wushuang said. Well, in that case, let's do it. After saying that, Xianxia and Yunshan each led a group of experts to the Nangong and Dongfang families. Xianxia, follow Elder Tong to the Divine Demon Sect. As for the Life and Death Tower, I will go alone, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Alone? Elder Tong and Great Divine Master Xianxia were stunned. But then they felt relieved. They did not dare to underestimate Jian Wushuang's strength alone. Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Xianxia, and the others immediately headed toward the Divine Demon Sect. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, flew toward the nest of the Tower of Life and Death alone. The Tower of Life and Death, as one of the top forces in the Pill Sun continent, had accumulated an extraordinary foundation over countless years. Its nest was also magnificent and majestic. It was a giant city which was the lair of the Tower of Life and Death. In the center of the city stood a towering tower that was hundreds of meters tall. The tower was hundreds of stories tall and extremely magnificent. Jian Wushuang appeared outside the giant city and looked down at everything inside the city through the heavy array around the city. Then, a huge surge of divine power swept up and directly covered the giant city in front of him. Rumble, the divine power was so strong that it crushed everything. Even the array around the city seemed to tremble under the pressure of the divine power. The experts of the Life and Death Tower in the city were immediately alarmed. At the top of the towering Tower of Life and Death, the Tower Lord, whose eyes were slightly closed, immediately sensed something and couldn't help but open his eyes. Tower Lord. A senior great deity walked in anxiously. Are they here? The Tower Lord's voice was low as he asked, are they from Crimson Rock Castle or the Sword Union? How many are there? There's only one person, the senior great deity said. One person. The Tower Master's expression changed. Although there's only one person, this person, he is Sword One, the senior great divine master said with a trace of shock. The Tower Master could not help but be startled, but he also smiled bitterly. Let's go and see Sword One together. The Tower Master sighed and immediately stood up and rushed out of the city, accompanied by the great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death. Most of the great divine masters had participated in the previous battle and had witnessed Jian Wushuang defeating the allied forces of the four forces alone. Now they followed the tower to the outside of the city. They were all shocked to see Jian Wushuang standing proudly in the void. It was true that Jian Wushuang was the only one standing in front of them. However, this one person had brought them unprecedented pressure. The pressure was so great that even if all the people of the Life and Death Tower worked together, they would not be able to withstand it. He alone could make the entire Tower of Life and Death suffocate. Moreover, they all knew that Jian Wushuang carried several corpse puppets with him. There were even golden-armored corpse puppets. Greetings, Mr. Jian Yi, the Tower Master said humbly. He stood in front of Jian Wushuang and bowed slightly. Tower Master, you should know the purpose of my trip, right? Jian Wushuang stared at the Tower Master coldly. I know. The Tower Master nodded, but his expression was a little sad. In a word, submit or die, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Mr. Jian Yi, the Tower of Life and Death is willing to submit and will follow the lead of Crimson Rock Castle from now on, the Life and Death Tower Master said directly. He had long been prepared to submit to Crimson Rock Castle. Not only him but also the great divine masters behind him. Submission is not something that can be said with words, Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. I don't know what request Mr. Jian Yi has, but I can agree to anything that the Life and Death Tower can agree to, the Life and Death Tower Master said. With your attitude, I can save a lot of time on this trip. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, listen, 3 conditions. First, hand over 50,000 sacred elixirs. The first condition Jian Wushuang mentioned made the experts from the Tower of Life and Death gasp. 50,000 sacred elixirs? The average first-grade divine master on the Danyang continent was only worth about 1,000 to 2,000 sacred elixirs. 50,000 sacred elixirs were too much. The Tower of Life and Death has such a deep foundation and has been recuperating for a long time. Unlike Crimson Rock Castle, which is constantly fighting among itself, it should have plenty of resources. You should be able to afford 50,000 sacred elixirs, Jian Wushuang said. The Tower of Life and Death has agreed to provide 50,000 sacred elixirs, but they are too difficult to obtain. The Tower of Life and Death cannot provide 50,000 ready-made sacred elixirs. At most, we can only provide 30,000 sacred elixirs. The rest can only be replaced with treasures or resources of equal value, the Tower Master said directly. However, as he spoke, the corners of his mouth obviously twitched. The Tower of Life and Death could indeed provide 50,000 sacred elixirs, but that was about 80% of the resources of the Tower of Life and Death. The second condition, Jian Wushuang continued, 70% of the territory and properties under the control of the Tower of Life and Death. The Tower Master trembled. Behind him, the great divine masters from the Tower of Life and Death looked furious. Even though they were prepared, they still found it hard to accept Jian Wushuang's second condition. Hand over 70% of their territories and industries. After all, the Tower of Life and Death had spent a long time to manage these territories and industries. This was their true foundation. Losing 50,000 sacred elixirs and resources was nothing. As long as they were given time, they could slowly accumulate the industries under the Tower of Life and Death. But now that they lost their industries, they lost the capital to accumulate resources. This condition was much harsher than the previous one. I, the Tower of Life and Death, accept this condition, As the tower master said this, his teeth were chattering. He had no other choice. Otherwise, he would never agree to such a condition. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang smiled and said again, "One last condition. Crimson Rock Castle has just been engaged in a war and does not have enough experts. Therefore, the Tower of Life and Death needs to send a few experts to follow our orders. I see that the Tower of Life and Death still has more than 10 great divine masters. How about this? Sending 8 great divine masters is not a lot." Jian Wushuang said casually, but in the ears of the great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death, their expressions changed drastically. Some of them were even more furious after their deaths. "You want the sacred elixirs, you want the property, and now you want the experts of the Tower of Life and Death?" The experts of the Tower of Life and Death were all extremely shocked and furious. If they did not know the terrifying strength of Jian Wushuang, they would have rushed forward and cut him into pieces. They had no choice. Jian Wushuang's 3 conditions were indeed a little too excessive. They were so excessive that they could not accept it. The Life and Death Tower Master's body was trembling at the moment, and his heart was burning with anger, but he could only endure it. After a long while, he finally raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang again. "Mr. Jian, the Life and Death Tower has agreed to the 3rd condition. But I wonder which 8 experts of the Life and Death Tower do you need to follow the orders of the Crimson Rock Castle?" "Tower Master." The great divine masters were all shocked. The Tower Master waved his hand, indicating that they should not say anything. "Let me look at the 8 experts." Jian Wushuang smiled and pointed with his finger. This, and that. The great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death were selected by Jian Wushuang one by one. The great divine masters he selected were all great divine masters with strong divine power and strength, leaving behind the weak. After selecting 8 great divine masters, there were 4 great divine masters left in the Tower of Life and Death. Apart from the Tower Master, there were only 3 junior great divine masters. One of them had just become a great divine master. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang wanted the Tower Master to become a commander without a leader. Even if he had the battle strength of a peak great divine master, he had no other great divine masters to command. He would not be able to do anything in the future even if he wanted to. After these people go to Crimson Rock Castle, the upper echelons of the Tower of Life and Death will be a little empty. However, don't worry, Tower Master. If there are other forces in the Danyang continent who dare to harbor ill intentions toward the Tower of Life and Death, the Crimson Rock Tower will not pretend not to see it. Jian Wushuang smiled. "Now that the matter is settled, I can give you a month's time. I hope you can prepare everything in a month. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." With that, Jian Wushuang turned around and left. After Jian Wushuang left, the experts of the Tower of Life and Death immediately burst into an uproar. "Tower Master, Jian Yi's conditions are so excessive. Why did you agree to them?" a great divine master roared. The Tower Master shook his head with a bitter smile. "So what if I don't agree? I'm not as strong as him. If I dared to say no just now, Jian Yi would immediately start a massacre. Who in the Tower of Life and Death can stop him?" Now, although the Tower of Life and Death has paid a great price and lost 70% of its foundation, the Tower of Life and Death is still safe. It's enough that the Tower of Life and Death is safe. Hearing the words of the Tower Master, the surrounding great divine masters all fell silent. The Tower of Life and Death was carried out smoothly because of Jian Wushuang's intimidation. Although the other 3 forces were not as straightforward, they still submitted one by one and paid a huge price. The price was similar to that of the Life and Death Tower. Soon, Jian Wushuang and Yin Suer met again. Things are going very smoothly. The 4 forces are all willing to submit, and they have offered huge resources and 70% of their assets. They have also agreed to send a group of experts to follow the orders of our Crimson Rock Castle. Yin Suer said. Then she looked at Jian Wushuang. "Mr. Jian Yi, the Sword Union is largely responsible for the victory of the war, including the results we have obtained. How do you want to distribute the things we have obtained from the 4 top forces?" They had obtained great benefits, so they had to distribute them. After all, the Sword Union and the Crimson Rock Castle were just cooperating with each other, not a real family. I need sacred elixirs, Jian Wushuang said directly. I know. Yin Suer nodded slightly. How about this, Mr. Jian Yi? I will give you all the sacred elixirs I have obtained from the 4 top forces, including the Nangong Palace, the Life and Death Tower, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family. As for the territories and properties of the 4 top forces, how about they belong to the Crimson Rock Castle? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang looked indifferent. Behind him, Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Zhu Xian, and the others all frowned. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded and agreed. Agreed. Yin Suer was shocked. Yun Shan, Palace Master Xijin, and the others behind her were also surprised. The territories and properties controlled by the 4 top forces were obviously more valuable and much more valuable. This distribution was obviously unfair. Yin Suer had only said it casually and did not expect Jian Wushuang to agree. However, Jian Wushuang not only agreed, but also did not hesitate at all. Mr. Jian Yi, it's a deal, Yin Suer said. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded. After both sides reached an agreement, they returned to their respective homes. In the Grand Hall of the Sword League, many high-level experts of the Sword League gathered together. They had learned that the 4 top forces had submitted and made great concessions. They also knew about the agreement between Jian Wushuang and Yin Suer. Young master, you shouldn't have promised Yin Suer so much. Xianxia stood beside Jian Wushuang. He frowned and said, This time, the 4 top forces have indeed forced them to hand over a lot of sacred elixirs. The 4 top forces together have about 200,000 sacred elixirs. It looks like a huge amount of money, but in fact, 200,000 sacred elixirs are nothing compared to 70% of the territory property of the 4 top forces. Because of you, the Sword Union has grown at an amazing speed. Each day is stronger than the last. If the Sword Union can accept enough territories and industries from the 4 top forces, we can become a colossus on the Pill Sun continent. By then, we can compete with the Crimson Rock Castle and even replace it as the new. Before Xianxia could finish her words, she suddenly stopped. This was because Xianxia had noticed Jian Wushuang's cold expression. She had been by Jian Wushuang's side for a long time, so she could also sense his emotions. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang was a little angry. Naturally, she did not dare to say anything more. Xiao, I can pretend that I didn't hear what you just said, but don't do it again, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Yes. Xianxia was shocked and immediately nodded obediently. Jian Wushuang glanced at Xianxia and then looked at the experts of the Sword Union, frowning slightly. He could see that most of the higher-ups of the Sword Union had the same idea as Xianxia. They all thought that the Sword Union was very powerful now, and because of him, the most powerful expert of the realm, the Sword Union could take a step forward and replace Crimson Rock Castle as the new overlord. In fact, it was true that people went higher and water flowed lower. Any cultivator who reached a certain level would naturally want to go one step further. It was the same for a force. However, Jian Wushuang had a different idea from them. To be exact, Jian Wushuang's vision was much higher than theirs. He did not care about the Pill Sun sacred world at all. He did not even care about the Golden Crow 9 world. The reason why he established the Sword League in the sacred world of the Pill Sun was to help Yin Suer resolve the situation in the Pill Sun sacred world, and at the same time, make it easier for him to plunder cultivation resources. But now, he had basically achieved his goal, and the role of the Sword League had been fully played in his eyes. He did not want the Sword League to advance further, so when Yin Suer proposed the distribution, he agreed without even considering it. However, he had high standards and did not take the Pill Sun sacred world to heart. However, the experts under the Sword Union did not think so. After all, the experts under the Sword Union would at most become great divine venerables in the future. To them, the Pill Sun sacred world or the Golden Crow 9 worlds was already an incomparably huge stage. They were limited to this. If there was a chance, they would naturally do their best to fight for it. Now that the 4 top forces in the Pill Sun sacred world have submitted and handed over many resources and industries, There is no longer any need to worry. Next, the Pill Sun Sacred World will be ruled by the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. Although the Sword Union and the Crimson Rock Castle have always been fighting together, it is only a cooperative relationship after all. There is no room for two tigers on the same mountain. Now that I'm here, neither the Sword Union nor the Crimson Rock Castle will dare to fall out with each other. However, if I leave the Pill Sun Sacred World in the future, it's hard to say. It seems that I have to think of a better way to solve this problem. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. After a long while, he raised his head again and looked down at the experts of the Sword Union. Listen up. I have made an agreement with In Suer, the Lord of Crimson Rock Castle. The territories and industries vacated by the four top forces are all owned by Crimson Rock Castle. If anyone from the Sword Union dares to object or do anything, don't blame me for turning hostile. Jian Wushuang's cold voice echoed throughout the hall. Then, Jian Wushuang turned around and left. After Jian Wushuang left, the high-level experts of the Sword Union looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Miss Xiao, what do you think? Dong Shui looked at Xiao Tixin. Since you have an order, we just need to follow it. Don't ask about anything else, Xiao Tixin said coldly. Yes, yes. The people of the Sword Union immediately nodded, not daring to have any objections. Jian Wushuang's position in the Sword Union was too high. Although he usually left many things to Xiao Tixin and the others, he rarely paid attention to them. But in the Sword Union, he still kept his word. No one dared to disobey his words. After all, Jian Wushuang was 99% the reason why the Sword Union had become what it was today. The reason why the Sword Union could compete with Crimson Rock Castle was purely because of Jian Wushuang's existence. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The four top forces also obediently gave up the promised sacred elixirs and the territorial properties. At the same time, the great divine masters went to Crimson Rock Castle and listened to their orders. According to the agreement, the sacred elixirs were also sent to Jian Wushuang. In the secret chamber, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged with a Chenkuan loan in his hand. The Chenkuan loan contained a large number of sacred elixirs. Some of the sacred elixirs were sent by the four top forces, and some were the spoils of war that Jian Wushuang had won in the previous battle. He had killed many experts in the previous battle. He had killed a total of 3 peak divine masters, including Palace Master Nanwu and the East God, who were in charge of the 2 major forces, especially Palace Master Nanwu. As the acknowledged number 1 expert in the Pill Sun continent, Palace Master Nanwu was extremely wealthy. Jian Wushuang had obtained 30,000 sacred elixirs and all kinds of precious treasures from him alone. Jian Wushuang had not dealt with these treasures yet, but he had a lot of sacred elixirs. I consumed about 60,000 sacred elixirs when I broke through from an advanced divine master to a peak divine master. Now, I need more sacred elixirs to break through from a peak divine master to an elementary divine master. The sacred elixirs I have now are enough to improve my divine power, but I'm afraid I need more to break through, Jian Wushuang thought. As Jian Wushuang's realm increased, he needed more and more sacred elixirs. Even if he got more than 200,000 sacred pills, he would not be able to make another breakthrough. However, it was not a problem for him to increase his divine power. During my fight with Palace Master Nanwu, I created the ultimate skill, the 8th move of the Spacetime Sword skill. When I created the sword skill, my understanding of sword principle and spacetime rules improved greatly. Now that I have calmed down, I can study it and digest all the progress. Jian Wushuang murmured. Soon, he closed his eyes and began to refine the sacred elixirs. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 12 years had passed. During these 12 years, Crimson Rock Castle had completely controlled the territories that the 4 top forces had given up. It had also arranged the experts from the 4 top forces and made good use of them. The power of Crimson Rock Castle suddenly soared. It began to regain its former dominance over the Danyang continent. Over the past 12 years, all the forces in the vast Danyang continent had submitted to the Crimson Rock Castle. Of course, these forces did not include the Sword Union. During the past 12 years, the Sword Union did not continue to expand because of Jian Wushuang's restriction. It also did not have any disputes with the Crimson Rock Castle. Naturally, the Crimson Rock Castle was not stupid enough to provoke the Sword Union. In other words, both sides were trying their best to restrain themselves and maintain their alliance. They were at the edge of the Danyang continent. In a hidden valley, several figures were standing there waiting respectfully. These people were the people of the Heaven Void Palace led by Chun Kong. In the battle 12 years ago, the Heaven Void Palace and the Blood Thunder King faction had joined hands, but they were defeated by Insuer and Jian Wushuang. Several senior great divine masters of the Heaven Void Palace had also died at the hands of Jian Wushuang. However, after the battle, the people of the Heaven Void Palace did not immediately leave the Pil-Sun sacred world. Instead, they found a place to hide. Buzz! Buzz! A burst of dazzling light suddenly lit up somewhere in the valley. This light was produced by the activation of a wormhole hidden in the valley. The light gradually faded, and a figure slowly appeared in front of Chun Kong and the others. This person was wearing a stone-green brocade robe. He had dark red hair and a pair of deep and wise peach blossom eyes. His body was quite handsome, but his expression was incomparably cold. The moment he appeared in front of Chun Kong's group, Chun Kong and the experts from the Heavenly Void Palace immediately bowed in unison. "Greetings, sir." This cold man did not glance at Chun Kong's group in front of him. Instead, he randomly looked around him. The Pil-Sun sacred realm hasn't been here for quite some time. The last time I came to see that Crimson Rock Saint. But now, that Crimson Rock Saint is long dead. Chun Kong and the others listened to the cold-looking man muttering to himself, but they did not dare to interrupt him. Instead, they all lowered their heads. They were very clear about the cold-looking man in front of them. He was the most trusted person of their Lord Palace Master, and he was also his right-hand man. There were many things in the Golden Crow 9 realms that their Palace Lord could not handle personally. He had always sent this cold-looking man to handle them, and this time was no exception. After a long while, the cold-looking man finally turned his eyes to Chun Kong and the others. "Tell me, what exactly happened?" Chun Kong immediately spoke, recounting the scene of the great battle and the events that had happened in the Pil-Sun sacred world. "My lord, I was indeed incompetent in this matter. I thought that after joining hands with the Blood Thunder King, we should be able to take control of the Crimson Rock Castle. I did not expect that the Crimson Rock Castle would actually invite the Sword Alliance as a helper. The current situation on the Pil-Sun continent is completely different from before. The Crimson Rock Fort has already taken control of everything and respects Insuer completely. Under such circumstances, I really can't continue to complete the mission given by the Palace Master, so I can only ask for your help, my lord." Chun Kong was extremely respectful. Hearing Chun Kong's words, the cold man narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying that you lost because of one person, and that person is now publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert in the Pil-Sun sacred world?" "Yes, that Sword One's strength is extremely terrifying. He killed Palace Head Nanwu in that battle, and he killed 3 peak stage Great Divine Masters in one go. Killing ordinary high-level Great Divine Masters was like slaughtering chickens and dogs. His strength is too strong," Chun Kong said hurriedly. "Sword One and Insuer have always been on the same side. With him around, even if I ask Palace Master to mobilize more people, I'm afraid I won't be able to do anything to Crimson Rock Castle." "He killed Palace Master Nanwu in a head-on battle?" The cold man's expression changed. "Although I've never fought Palace Master Nanwu before, I've heard of him. His strength is indeed quite good, but Sword One was able to kill him in a head-on battle. Could it be that he's already become an invincible divine master? I don't know if he's an invincible divine master or not, but he did create an ultimate technique in that battle. His true realm is only that of a senior great divine master," Chun Kong said. "Senior great divine master?" The cold man was startled. "Haha. A senior great divine master actually killed Palace Master Nanwu directly and could easily kill a peak great divine master. This is interesting. Even I'm interested in him. Tell me, where is Sword One now?" "He is in the Sword Union. If you want to go, I can lead the way," Chun Kong said. "Lead the way." The cold man waved his hand. Chun Kong did not dare to be negligent and immediately led the way. Not long after, Chun Kong brought the cold man to the vicinity of the Sword Union's headquarters. Sir, that is where the Sword Union's headquarters is. Jenny is inside right now, Chun Kong said. The cold man nodded slightly. His figure slowly moved forward and arrived in the void above the headquarters of the Sword Union. Sword One. The cold voice came out of the cold man's mouth. It seemed to be a casual voice, but after being transmitted by divine power, the voice was like rolling thunder, echoing continuously in the world. Sword One. Sword One. Sword One. The echoes reverberated throughout the world and did not disappear for a long time. Many experts of the Sword Union were instantly alarmed. Who dares to be presumptuous in front of the gate of our Sword Union? How dare he call the name of the Alliance Master directly? How dare he? Even if the Lord of Crimson Rock Castle, Sewer, came here personally, he would still have to politely call our Alliance Master as Mr. Sword One. Now, where did this fool who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth come from? A series of shocked and angry voices sounded one after another. From the Sword Alliance's nest, figures rushed out one after another. At the same time, those top experts of the Sword Alliance, such as Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Ju Xian, and others had also appeared in the void. Many experts of the Sword Alliance glared at the cold man standing there. Only Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Ju Xian, Elder Snake, and the others could sense that this person's strength seemed to be extraordinary, so their expressions were somewhat solemn. Who are you? Elder Tong stared at the cold man. Marquis of 3 The cold man spoke slowly. Marquis of 3 Upon hearing this name, many experts of the Sword Alliance felt that this name was extremely unfamiliar. Elder Tong had been in the Pill Sun continent for so many years. He should know which experts there were in the Pill Sun continent, but he had never heard of an expert called Marquis of 3 May I know why you have come to our Sword Alliance? Elder Tong asked. I'm here to see Sword One. Are you Sword One? The cold man, Marquis of 3 looked at Elder Tong. No, I'm not. Elder Tong shook his head. Then I have nothing to say to you. Just hand over Sword One and tell me, said Marquis of 3 My League Master is in closed-door cultivation. Just no one can see him. So please leave, said Elder Snake. Oh, you are not willing to show yourself? Marquis of 3 smiled indifferently. Since I have come here personally to meet him, I will have to meet him even if he doesn't want to. Sir, you have a big mouth. Elder Tong's expression sank. The aura of a peak great deity erupted from his body in an instant and directly pressed toward the Marquis of 3 Sir, it is best for you to leave quickly. Otherwise, this old man will not be courteous. Elder Tong said in a deep voice. You won't be polite? With just you. The Marquis of 3 glanced at Elder Tong, a hint of contempt flashing across his face. You're courting death. Elder Tong naturally saw the change in the Marquis of 3's expression and immediately became furious. In an instant, Elder Tong directly turned into a bolt of lightning and charged toward the Marquis of 3 with endless power. But the moment he appeared in front of the Marquis of 3, buzz! The Marquis of 3's body slightly swayed. Before Elder Tong and many experts of the Sword Alliance could react, they discovered a palm had already slapped onto Elder Tong's divine body. What? Elder Tong's face turned pale with fright. The terrifying power from that palm also caused his divine body to tremble crazily. Pooh! A large mouthful of blood directly spurted out of Elder Tong's mouth, and his body shot backward like a cannonball. When he regained his balance, Elder Tong's face had turned pale, and the aura on his body had been greatly weakened. He widened his eyes and stared at the Marquis of 3 in shock. The surrounding experts of the Sword Alliance also waited quietly. Elder Tong was a peak great divine master, but he was heavily injured by the Marquis of 3 in just the blink of an eye. What kind of strength was this? Sword One. Marquis of 3's voice rang out again. His voice reverberated in the world. Are you still not coming out? If you don't come out, Your subordinates will die. The echoes continued to echo for a long time. Jian Wushuang had been cultivating in a secret chamber in the deepest part of the underground of the Sword Alliance's base. Finally, he had reached the pinnacle of his understanding of sword principle and space-time rules. He had already reached this step when he created the ultimate skill. He was trying to master it. But at this moment, Marquis of Three Yin's voice was heard. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly and slowly opened his eyes. Then he moved and disappeared from the secret chamber. In the void above the Sword Alliance's lair, Jian Wushuang appeared out of thin air. As soon as he appeared, he saw the Marquis of Three Yin standing not far in front of him. Looking at the Marquis of Three Yin, Jian Wushuang could not help but narrow his eyes. Although the Marquis of Three Yin did not exude any aura and seemed ordinary, Jian Wushuang could feel tremendous pressure from him. The pressure was so great. It was even greater than when he faced Palace Master Nanwu. Since when did such a powerful expert appear in the Pill Sun sacred world? Jian Wushuang frowned. Then he noticed Elder Tong, whose aura was weak. What's going on? Jian Wushuang asked. Alliance Master, this expert called Marquis of Three Yin suddenly came here and called you by your name. He wanted to see you. We knew you were in seclusion, so we wanted him to leave. But he didn't want to, so Elder Tong attacked him. Of course, we didn't expect the Marquis of Three Yin to injure Elder Tong in one move seriously, Snake Elder said respectfully. You seriously injured Elder Tong in one move? Jian Wushuang's face darkened. He also knew Elder Tong's strength. If it were him, he would have to use all of his trump cards in order to seriously injure or kill Elder Tong. However, the Marquis of Three Yin did not use his full strength at all. It was just an understatement, but he still managed to do it. The strength of the Marquis of Three Yin. Who are you? Why are you here? Jian Wushuang looked at the Marquis of Three Yin with his hands behind his back. Although the Marquis of Three Yin was very powerful and gave him a lot of pressure, Jian Wushuang was not afraid. Are you Sword One? The Marquis of Three Yin glanced at Jian Wushuang and said, Sure enough, you are just an advanced divine master. He praised the Marquis of Three Yin and said seriously, I came here today because I heard that a great genius expert appeared in the Pill Sun sacred world. He was just an advanced great divine master, but he killed Palace Master Nanwu. I was curious about you, so I came here to meet you. Just meet me? Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. Of course not. If possible, I would like to kill you, a genius. The Marquis of Three Yin grinned. Hearing this, the experts of the Sword Alliance narrowed their eyes and became extremely vigilant. They looked at Marquis of Three Yin with anger. Even Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly. If you want to kill me, let's see if you have the ability to do so, Jian Wushuang said. Why don't you give it a try? The Marquis of Three Yin sneered, and his ordinary aura finally began to erupt. Rumble. This aura was earth-shaking. Although it was still at the Divine Master level, it was several times stronger than ordinary Divine Masters, or even peak Great Divine Masters. The aura stirred up the wind and clouds, and even Jian Wushuang's face became more serious. Without a doubt, this aura was the strongest Divine Master's aura that Jian Wushuang had ever seen. Jian Wushuang instantly recognized the identity of the person in front of him. Invincible Divine Master. Marquis of Three Yin is a real invincible Divine Master. The invincible Divine Master had not appeared in the Pill Sun sacred world for a long time. But now that the Marquis of Three Yin had appeared in front of him, Jian Wushuang immediately understood that the Marquis of Three Yin must have come from the outside world. After seeing the Marquis of Three Yin's strength, Jian Wushuang naturally became more vigilant. Rumble. Majestic divine power swept out from his body. Jian Wushuang had already used all of his divine punishment, 9 luminary star armor, and 7-star secret skill. His aura suddenly soared. Oh! Although he's only an advanced divine master, can his strength rise to the level of a peak divine master in a short time after using the secret skill? The Marquis of Three Yin looked at the change in Jian Wushuang's divine power aura and smiled indifferently. Then he directly attacked. He stretched out a hand, and his slender palm was suffused with a trace of green light. The green light surged out, and in an instant, A Saiyan Cyclops giant that was 300 meters tall appeared in the void in front of him. This Cyclops giant was covered in Saiyan armor and emitted a shocking murderous aura. Most importantly, when this Saiyan Cyclops giant appeared, Jian Wushuang also felt an extremely strong rule power from the giant. A giant formed entirely from divine power and raw power. This power is amazing. Jian Wushuang's eyes focused. Go! The Marquis of 3 pointed with one hand. Roar! The Saiyan Cyclops giant roared toward the sky, which formed a terrifying sound wave. The Cyclops jumped up high, clenched his right hand into a fist, and fiercely rushed toward Jian Wushuang. Before the fist arrived, the sound of the air being compressed and exploded had already made Jian Wushuang extremely solemn. The Blood Mountain sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. His body flashed in a strange manner, but the long sword slashed out directly from the top down. A beautiful sword light appeared out of thin air. The sword light had a trace of confusion and was intoxicating. It was the 7th move of the space-time swordsmanship, Infatuation. Jian Wushuang did not use the ultimate skill, 1,000 Squares Residual Light, which he had created. However, because he had created the ultimate skill, he had made a huge breakthrough in the space-time rule. Now, his comprehension of the space-time rule had reached the limit of a divine master. With this comprehension, he once again used the intoxication move, which was much more powerful than before. The beautiful sword light collided with the Saiyan Cyclops fist. Crash! The Cyclops fist was immediately torn apart, and a large amount of Psi and divine power spread wildly in all directions. The Cyclops' entire arm was cut open by the sword light, but the power of the sword light had also dissipated. Space-time blades, break! Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. In an instant, a dense number of space-time blades burst out, nearly 100 of them. Nearly 100 space-time blades was the limit of a divine master's ability. Each of these space-time blades was extremely huge and carried an astonishing strangling power. In a short while, they had directly crushed the Cyclops' huge body. The Saiyan Cyclops had completely collapsed. Not bad, you have some tricks. Marquis of 3 stood in the void and let Jian Wushuang crush the Saiyan Cyclops, but a faint smile appeared on his face. Jian Wushuang's face darkened slightly. Although he had neutralized the Marquis of 3's attack, he knew clearly that the Saiyan Cyclops was just a casual move of the Marquis of 3. He had not used his full strength, let alone his full strength. He was not really serious. But now, under Jian Wushuang's gaze, the Marquis of 3 flipped his palm and a pair of scarlet claw gloves appeared in his hand. Marquis of 3 put on the claw gloves. There were 5 sharp claws on the scarlet claw gloves, which were as long as the claws of a fierce beast. They were extremely sharp and cold. Sword 1, I heard that you are very good at speed? The Marquis of 3 stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's face was cold and he did not answer. It just so happens that I am also good at speed. Since we have met today, let's compete and see who is faster. Marquis of 3 sneered, but his body suddenly moved. Whoosh! 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 Jian Wushuang only saw a series of afterimages flashing in the void in front of him. Each flash was extremely short. In just a few flashes, Marquis of 3 had already appeared in front of him, and his ice-cold sharp claws had already swung out. Hiss! The space seemed to be torn apart by this claw. So fast! Jian Wushuang was shocked. The speed that Marquis of 3 burst out in an instant, including the speed of his claws, was unbelievably fast. Even Jian Wushuang, who had an extremely high comprehension of the space-time rules, could not help being a little shocked. He immediately moved to block it. Clang! The Blood Mountain sword blocked the sharp claws, and Jian Wushuang immediately retreated. However, Marquis of 3 did not give up. In a flash, he could easily catch up with Jian Wushuang. Humph! Jian Wushuang's face darkened, and a vast golden divine power immediately burst out. Jian Wushuang directly used his realm skill. Golden Light Realm, Star Armor Realm, Punishment Prison, and Jian Wushuang's Sword World. The 4 suppression skills burst out at the same time and instantly pressed on Marquis of 3's body. This was the realm that Jian Wushuang had used all 4 realms to suppress only one person. Even Marquis of Three Yin's body could not help but tremble when he used all his divine power. This domain suppression technique is indeed impressive. Marquis of Three Yin nodded secretly, but he continued to rush forward. Although his speed and strength were limited by the domain suppression, it was still very small. His speed was still astonishingly fast. In a series of flashes, he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again, and then his 2 sharp claws whoosh, 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 like 2 streams of light. They continued to attack Jian Wushuang from all directions. Jian Wushuang also exerted his comprehension of the space-time rules to the maximum. He completely unleashed his speed and brandished his Blood Mountain sword to block the attacks. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of metal colliding rang out continuously. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang and the Marquis of Three Yin had exchanged over 100 head-on blows. He's too fast. He's even slightly faster than me under the suppression of my domain. Jian Wushuang was a little shocked. His comprehension of the space-time rules had reached the limit of a divine master. Logically speaking, unless his opponent's comprehension of the rules reached the level of an immortal saint, no one should be able to match his speed. But in fact, Marquis of Three Yin was indeed faster than him. It's a secret skill. The secret skill he used has greatly improved his speed, Jian Wushuang thought. There were countless secret techniques in the absolute beginning divine realm. There were those that could increase one's strength and power, and those that could increase one's protective ability. Naturally, there were also secret techniques that could increase one's speed. The Marquis of Three Yin in front of him should have cultivated a very powerful secret technique that could increase one's speed. With the help of the secret skill, his speed and his attack speed were greatly improved. Otherwise, his speed would not be so fast. Damn it! He is so fast that even I can't resist him. Jian Wushuang frowned. He had fought with Marquis of Three Yin hundreds of times, so Marquis of Three Yin was faster than him. Under such circumstances, he was under more and more pressure and could not hold on any longer. Clang! There was another sound of metal colliding. Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword was forced to move to the side. A flaw! Marquis of Three Yin's eyes narrowed. He waved his right hand, and a sharp scarlet claw tore through the air and directly attacked Jian Wushuang's divine body. Jian Wushuang could not defend against this claw with his Blood Mountain sword. However, just as the scarlet claw was about to touch his divine body, a hazy purple light suddenly burst out from Jian Wushuang's body. The purple light continued to expand, forming a layer of purple barrier in an instant. At the same time, a faint ancient bell sound echoed. It was Jian Wushuang's protective treasure, the Purple Emperor Bell. The claw grabbed the purple bell, causing it to emit a clear bell sound. The color of the bell dimmed slightly, but the power of the claw was completely blocked by him. Ha! Marquis of Three Yin's face darkened. He quickly retreated and pulled away from Jian Wushuang. Standing in the void far away, the Marquis of Three Yin looked at Jian Wushuang again. A protective treasure? And it seems to be quite powerful. The Marquis of Three Yin murmured. He did not know that the Purple Emperor Bell was obtained by Jian Wushuang after he killed Saber Master in the secret realm. It came from that secret realm. The secret realm was left behind by the Rule Master, so any treasure that appeared from there was nothing special. The Purple Emperor Bell's protective ability was, of course, very strong. With such a protective treasure in hand, I'm afraid such an attack can't do anything to you. In that case, I'll have to use my killing move. The Marquis of Three Yin's eyes were filled with a fierce light, and there was a layer of blood-red mist surrounding his body. Without any warning, the Marquis of Three Yin appeared directly in front of Jian Wushuang. He waved the sharp claw in his right hand again. It looked no different than before, and Jian Wushuang subconsciously waved his Blood Mountain sword to block it. However, just as the Blood Mountain sword was about to collide with the sharp claw disappeared in front of him. Is this a phantom? Jian Wushuang's face changed. Marquis of Three Yin sneered and condensed the divine power in his hand. Divine Heart-Gouging Claw. Chi! The blood-red claw grabbed Jian Wushuang's heart with blood-red power. The barrier formed by the purple emperor bell was still in front of the blood-red claw. However, as soon as the blood-red claw touched the purple emperor bell, it opened its 5 fingers. The 5 streams of light were like 5 sharp sword rays, and a terrifying power burst out. Crack! Cracks appeared in the place where the blood-red claw touched the previously indestructible barrier of the purple emperor bell. Then the entire barrier of the purple emperor bell was completely broken. It broke my purple emperor bell in one strike? Jian Wushuang was shocked. He immediately understood that this claw was the ultimate skill created by the Marquis of 3 It was extremely powerful and extremely ghostly. Die! The blood-red claw broke the barrier of the purple emperor bell and continued to attack Jian Wushuang's divine body. However, Jian Wushuang's body protection ability was not limited to the purple emperor bell. His own body protection ability was extremely powerful. The claw had already used up about 80% of the purple emperor bell's power, leaving only 20% of its power. It was only enough to break through the dark golden armor formed by the 9 luminary star armor. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang was still sent flying heavily, but he soon regained his footing. He stood in the void and stared at Marquis of 3 with a grave expression. As expected of the invincible divine master. He's really strong. Jian Wushuang sighed inwardly. Just this claw alone can't hurt him? The Marquis of 3 looked at Jian Wushuang and frowned slightly. That claw was indeed one of the ultimate skills he had created, but it obviously could not hurt Jian Wushuang. It had only broken the purple emperor bell on his body. It seems that I have to use my last move, Marquis of 3 murmured, but his expression became extremely cold. Sword One, you can only be proud of being able to force me to use my strongest move, even if you die on the spot. The Marquis of 3's voice echoed throughout the world. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang's face could not help but darken. This guy actually has some tricks up his sleeve? I thought that claw just now was his strongest move, but he actually has an even stronger move? If I'm not mistaken, that claw just now should be the ultimate skill, and now he has an even stronger move. In other words, he created 2 ultimate skills at the same time. The experts of the Sword Alliance were also trembling in fear. From the beginning of this battle, they knew that this battle was not something they could interfere with. Even Elder Tong was not qualified to participate in such a big battle. They could only stand in the distance and watch quietly. The Marquis of 3 did not say any more nonsense. His expression was cold, and the vast blood-colored fog on his body swept out crazily. The blood-colored fog began to become extremely dense, like blood clouds that covered half of the world. In the blink of an eye, the blood-colored fog that filled the sky formed a huge creature in the void. It was a blood-colored giant wolf that was hundreds of meters tall and awe-inspiring. This blood-colored giant wolf had scarlet fur, scarlet eyes, and scarlet fangs. The most eye-catching part was its 4 sharp claws. Each of the 4 sharp claws was several meters long. Under the illumination of the light, they looked extremely cold and frightening. The giant blood-red wolf appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and stared at him with its scarlet eyes. Jian Wushuang stood there and could not help feeling a little frightened when being stared at by the giant blood-red wolf. At this moment, the Marquis of 3 who was covered by the giant blood-red wolf, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. Swish! The giant blood-red wolf rushed forward and raised one of its 4 sharp claws high up in the air. A scarlet claw shadow, which seemed to be condensed from blood, kept enlarging in the depths of Jian Wushuang's eyes. Blood-condensed claw. The Marquis of 3 also spoke coldly. Whoosh! The giant blood-red wolf's sharp scarlet claws swept down. This claw seemed to tear heaven and earth in half, and the sound of air being torn apart was extremely loud. Seeing this claw coming, Jian Wushuang's face was also unusually solemn. Buzz, buzz, a large amount of divine power swept up crazily. The Blood Mountain sword was also trembling crazily. The next moment, Jian Wushuang made his move. He just casually swung his sword. It looked like an ordinary person swinging a wooden sword. However, as soon as he swung his long sword, A sword light immediately lit up. This sword light was extremely weak, dim, and incomplete. It was a broken light, a remnant light. However, as soon as the remnant light appeared, there were at least hundreds and thousands of remnant lights everywhere. Under the gaze of many experts present, the original Jian Wushuang who displayed the sword skill suddenly turned into hundreds and thousands of people. It was the 8th move of the space-time sword skill, thousand-sided remnant light. It was also an ultimate skill. In the blink of an eye, the two ultimate skills collided head-on. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Endless divine power collided with each other crazily. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword light was at an absolute disadvantage. This was very normal. The power of the ultimate skill also varied. Jian Wushuang had created the space-time swordsmanship by combining the power of the space-time rules. The most terrifying part of this sword was its unparalleled speed. But when it came to the collision of power and power, this sword was at most similar to the Marquis 3 Yin's heart-gouging divine claw. But compared to the blood-congealed divine claw, it was far inferior. Boom! The giant blood-red wolf's sharp claw only paused for a moment before it crushed down with a crushing force. The void where Jian Wushuang was completely covered by a large amount of blood-red divine power, which was crazily annihilating everything. Marquis of 3 Yin had stopped what he was doing and stood in the void quietly watching. Blood-condensing claw was his most powerful move. It was much more powerful than the heart-gouging claw. He was very confident in this move. In his opinion, if Jian Wushuang still had the purple bell barrier, he might have been able to resist this move. But now, the purple emperor bell barrier had been defeated by him with his own protective ability. He would at least be seriously injured by this claw. But at this moment, whoosh! A towering sword shadow appeared out of thin air. The sword shadow swept across everything with great power, completely dispersing the blood-red divine power in front of him. After the blood-red divine power faded, a figure slowly stepped out of the void. It was Jian Wushuang. At this moment, although he was in a sorry state, his face did not change at all, and his aura was still very strong. Marquis of 3 Yin, do you have any more powerful skills? Jian Wushuang stood there and sneered. He is not injured? The Marquis of 3 Yin frowned and stared at Jian Wushuang. His perception was also very strong. Under his perception, Jian Wushuang was not injured at all. Moreover, Jian Wushuang's aura was still at the peak level, so it could not be faked. He was indeed not injured. I can't even hurt him with my strongest move. It would be wishful thinking to kill him. I'd better leave first and think about it later. The Marquis of 3 Yin had made up his mind. Sword 1, your protective ability is beyond my imagination. You're lucky today, but it won't end like this. Soon we'll fight again. The Marquis of 3 Yin sneered. Then he turned around and left. He was very calm. He was not worried that Jian Wushuang or the experts of the Sword Alliance would keep him. Jian Wushuang had no intention of keeping him. After all, his strength was above everyone else's. After the Marquis of 3 Yin had walked away, many high-level experts of the Sword Alliance immediately surrounded him. Alliance Master, are you okay? Snake Elder asked. I'm fine. Jian Wushuang shook his head, but his face was very serious. Marquis of 3 Yin. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Although the Marquis of 3 Yin could not do anything to him in this battle, Jian Wushuang knew very well that the Marquis of 3 Yin was stronger than him in terms of real strength. Although he did not use his full strength in this battle, he did not use the mountain and river map. However, Jian Wushuang knew that even if he used the mountain and river map and the Thousand Treasures Great World with his full strength, he would still not be able to defeat the Marquis of 3 Yin. He could be considered the best and strongest among the peak Divine Masters, but there was still a gap between him and the real invincible Divine Master. He did not know this gap before, but today, when he fought with the Marquis of 3 Yin, he completely understood it. What is the background of the Marquis of 3 Yin? Why did he come to fight with me? Jian Wushuang frowned for a long time. You stay in the Sword Alliance. I'll go to Crimson Rock Castle. Jian Wushuang instructed and immediately headed to Crimson Rock Castle. In the void far away from the Sword Alliance's nest, the Marquis of 3 Yin, who had just left the Sword Alliance, stopped here. Whoosh! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several figures appeared around the Marquis of 3 They were the people from the Heaven Void Palace led by Chen Kong. Sir, that sword one? Chen Kong asked carefully. He's still alive. I didn't manage to kill him, the Marquis of 3 said. Didn't manage to kill him? Chen Kong and the others could not help but be startled. Although this sword one's strength is not bad, he is still a distance away from the invincible reverent god. I can easily suppress him in a head-on battle. However, his protective ability is extremely formidable. Can even be considered abnormal. I have already used many methods, including my strongest ultimate move, but in the end, I was unable to injure him. With such a terrifying protective ability, unless the Palace Master personally acts, no one in our Heavenly Void Temple, including the entire Heavenly Void Realm, can kill him, the Marquis of 3 said. Chen Kong's expression changed. He was very clear about the Marquis of 3's methods. Since the Marquis of 3 had said so, then Sword One's protective ability was really strong. If the Sword One doesn't die, then it will be extremely difficult for us to conquer the Pill Sun sacred world, Chen Kong said. Yes, this Sword One is very difficult to deal with. Even if I use my full strength, I won't be able to do anything to him. On the other hand, he can rely on his domain methods and his protective ability to tangle with me. With his strength, if he is determined to tangle with me, I might not have the chance to free up my hands. Without me, it would be impossible for you people to conquer the Pill Sun sacred world. The Marquis of 3 said. That how to do? Should we give up on this? Chen Kong could not help looking over. Give up? The Marquis of 3 shook his head. The Palace Master has been eyeing the Pill Sun sacred world for a long time. Previously, it was because the Dragon God world was watching from the side that the Palace Master did not dare to do anything to the Pill Sun sacred world. He could only secretly send a part of his forces to infiltrate the world. But now, the Dragon God world was fighting with the other world not long ago, and the two sides are now in a heated battle. They have no time to care about what is happening here. How can we miss such a rare opportunity? My lord, you mean? Chen Kong looked at the Marquis of 3 The sacred Pill Sun world must be conquered, but my lord, because of the agreement and comfort of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, you can't come here personally. It's definitely not enough for you to conquer the sacred Pill Sun world. But if the Heavenly Void Army under my lord can be mobilized, it doesn't need to be all of them. Half of them should be enough to sweep the sacred Pill Sun world. The Marquis of 3 said. Heavenly Void Army. Chen Kong could not help but be startled. The Heavenly Void Army was the strongest army under the control of that Palace Master of the Heavenly Void Palace. That Heavenly Void Palace Master had once relied on the Heavenly Void Army to expand his territory. This was definitely one of the top armies of the Golden Crow 9 realms. If the Heavenly Void Army were to be mobilized, then with the current strength of the sacred Pill Sun world, they definitely would not be able to withstand it. I'll send a message to Palace Master now. Marquis of 3 made up his mind and immediately took out his token to send a message to the Palace Master. On the other side, after Jian Wushuang fought with the Marquis of 3 he immediately went to Crimson Rock Castle. Soon, he met Yin Suer. In the towering palace, besides Yin Suer who sat on the highest throne, Yun Shan and Palace Master Xizhen stood on both sides. Sword One, have a seat. Yin Suer was still very polite to Jian Wushuang and did not put on any airs. She directly ordered someone to bring a throne to sit in the palace. I wonder why you are here today, Sword One? Yin Suer asked. Doesn't Castle Master Suer know why I'm here? Haven't you received any news? Jian Wushuang asked in puzzlement. Many experts in the Sword Alliance, including those outside the Sword Alliance, knew about the battle between him and the Marquis of 3 in the nest of the Sword Alliance. If Yin Suer had planted spies in the Sword Alliance, she should have received the news at once. But it seemed that Yin Suer did not. I really don't know why you're here, Sword One, and I haven't received any news. Yin Suer was telling the truth. She did not place any spies in the Sword Alliance. In fact, Palace Master Xizhen and Yun Shan both minded her doing so, but she rejected them. She did not want Jian Wushuang to have any grudges against her. At present, Crimson Rock Castle still needed the Sword Alliance, and specifically Jian Wushuang's help. It's like this. Just now, an expert came to the Sword Alliance and fought with me. I lost this battle, Jian Wushuang said. What? Yin Suer, Yun Shan, and Palace Master Xizhen were all shocked. Jian Wushuang had killed Palace Master Nan Wu in a head-on fight, and he was widely recognized as the #1 expert in the Pil Sun continent. He was even very close to the legendary Invincible Divine Master. How could he lose in a one-on-one fight? Is it because of the Invincible Divine Master? Yin Suer immediately looked over. Yes, he is a real Invincible Divine Master, and he is very powerful. His name is the Marquis of 3 Yin. Do you know him, Castle Lord Suer? Jian Wushuang looked at Yin Suer. He had never left the Pil Sun sacred world, but he did not know about the background of the Marquis of 3 Yin. However, Yin Suer was different. She was the fort master of Crimson Rock Castle and had been the ruler of the Pil Sun sacred world for many years. She often traveled in the outside world, so she must know more about the experts than Jian Wushuang. That was why Jian Wushuang came to ask. Marquis of 3 Yin? Upon hearing the name, Yin Suer's expression became extremely solemn. Yun Shan, who was beside her, immediately frowned. It was obvious that he had heard of the Marquis of 3 Yin. It seems that Castle Lord Suer knows of Marquis of 3 Yin? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Yes, I know of him. Yin Suer nodded slightly. Marquis of 3 Yin is a very famous expert in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. He is also a genuine Invincible Divine Master. Most of the ordinary Invincible Divine Masters have only created one ultimate skill, but he has created 2 at the same time. Moreover, the second skill is exceptionally powerful. It is much more powerful than the ordinary ultimate skill. Because of this, Marquis of 3 Yin can do whatever he wants in the Golden Crow 9 realms. As long as he is not stupid enough to provoke the Immortal Saint, no one can do anything to him. If an ordinary Divine Realm expert met him in the outside world, he would respectfully call him Sir. Why would such an expert come to our Pil Sun sacred world and take the initiative to look for me? Jian Wushuang asked. It's easy to understand. The Marquis of 3 Yin came from the Heaven Void world. He is a member of the Heaven Void Palace and the most trusted person of the Master. He is the real arm of the Master. When the Master of the Heaven Void Palace is not convenient to handle many things in the Golden Crow 9 realms, he is usually the one to handle them, Yin Suer said. People from the Heaven Void Palace? Jian Wushuang immediately understood. The Heaven Void Palace had participated in the previous battle. It was obvious that the Heaven Void Palace was targeting the Pil Sun sacred world. The Master of the Heaven Void Palace wanted to attack the Pil Sun sacred world. Unfortunately, because of Jian Wushuang, the Heaven Void Palace was defeated and their people escaped. Now that the Marquis of 3 Yin had come in person, it was obvious that the Heaven Void Palace did not intend to stop there. Marquis of 3 Yin came to him because he wanted to kill him, the strongest expert in the Pil Sun continent, and then he could easily wipe out the Sword Alliance and Crimson Rock Castle. At that time, the Heavenly Void world did not need to send too many forces to easily occupy the Pil Sun sacred world. However, the Marquis of 3 Yin had not been able to kill him. If the Heavenly Void Palace wanted to occupy the Pil Sun sacred world, they would need to use even more methods. Previously, they sent Chen Kong and the others to infiltrate and even colluded with the Blood Thunder King. Now that the Marquis of 3 Yin has come in person, it seems that the Heavenly Void Palace Master is determined to annex the Pil Sun sacred world. Yun Shan said coldly. Humph, swallow our sacred Pil Sun world? Doesn't he think that his appetite is too big? Palace Master Xizhen said in a low voice. No, if the Heavenly Void Realm is really determined to take action against our sacred Pil Sun world, then with our current strength, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist. Yin Suer frowned. The Heavenly Void Realm was originally larger and more powerful than our Pil Sun sacred world. Yin Suer's voice echoed throughout the entire hall. When Father was still alive, our Pil Sun sacred world was at its peak. Compared to the Heavenly Void Realm, our Pil Sun sacred world was slightly weaker. Moreover, the strength of the Heavenly Void Palace Master was also slightly stronger than Father. Since my father died, our Pill Sun Sacred World's overall strength has plummeted. In recent years, we have been engaged in internal battles. During the internal strife, our Crimson Rock Castle has even lost control of the entire sacred world. It can be said that our sacred world has suffered a great loss, although the internal strife has subsided and our sacred world has regained its absolute control. Our sacred world's strength has not recovered. It is still at its lowest point. If the Heaven Void world takes the opportunity to attack us, our sacred world will have a hard time contending against it. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang, Yun Shan, and Palace Master Xizhan's faces darkened. Don't the 9 realms of the Golden Crow have some potential agreements? Does the Heaven Void Palace really dare to invade our Saint Realm? Palace Master Xizhan asked. It's true that there are agreements between the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but most of them only restrict the immortal saints of each realm. As for the forces under their control, there are no restrictions. Therefore, as long as the Heaven Void Palace Master doesn't show himself, he will let his experts fight to expand the territory. This is not a violation of the agreement, Yin Suer said. At this moment, Yin Suer's expression suddenly changed. Oh no! What's wrong? Jian Wushuang, Yun Shan, and Palace Master Xizhan immediately looked over. I just received a message from a good friend, Yin Suer said in a low voice. I met this good friend when I was adventuring in the outside world. He's from the Heavenly Void world, but he's not from the Heavenly Void Palace. He just learned that the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace has personally issued an order and has begun to gather the Heavenly Void Army. It seems that he's making a big move. The Heavenly Void Army? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. It is the strongest army under the control of the Heavenly Void Palace, just like the Crimson Rock Army in our Crimson Rock Castle. But the Heavenly Void Army is even stronger than the Crimson Rock Army. Yin Suer said solemnly. As far as I know, the Heavenly Void Army has always maintained the size of 2,000 people and has many experts. Even if it is just an ordinary soldier, he is usually an advanced Divine Master or even a peak Divine Master. The captain of the 10-man team is usually a great Divine Master. What? Jian Wushuang was also shocked. In a 2,000-man army, the weakest ordinary soldier was an advanced Divine Master. The captain of the 10-man team was a great Divine Master? Did that mean that there were 200 great Divine Masters in the 2,000-man Heavenly Void Army? How is it possible that there are so many great Divine Masters and Divine Masters under the command of the Heavenly Void Palace? Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Of course it's possible, Yin Suer said directly. The Heavenly Void Palace has always been the leader of the Heavenly Void world. The Master of the Heavenly Void Palace controls everything, and the territory of the Heavenly Void world is much larger than that of our Pill Sun Sacred World. Naturally, more than 80% of the experts are under the command of the Master of the Heavenly Void world. There are also various forces in the Heavenly Void world, but the experts of these forces follow the lead of the Heavenly Void Palace. Many experts in the Heavenly Void Army come from these forces. It can be said that the Heavenly Void Army is formed by gathering the power of the entire Heavenly Void realm. It's not difficult to find 200 great Divine Masters in such a huge Heavenly Void realm. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. Indeed, take the current Pill Sun Sacred World for example. Even though it had been in internal strife for many years and its vitality had been greatly damaged, the great Divine Masters in the Pill Sun Sacred World, Crimson Rock Castle, Sword Alliance, the 4 top forces, as well as many first-rate forces on the Pill Sun continent, and even a large number of solitary experts. Adding them all up, there were still quite a number of them. It was just that these forces were currently unable to be completely controlled by the Crimson Rock Castle. However, in the Heavenly Void world, many great Divine Masters were mostly under the command of the Heavenly Void Temple Master. He had formed such a tyrannical Heavenly Void Army, so it naturally became a reality. The Heavenly Void Army's combat strength is extremely tyrannical, Yin Suer continued. Even at its peak, there is still a huge gap between the Crimson Rock Army formed by thousands of elite Divine Masters and dozens of advanced Divine Masters and the Heavenly Void Army. Now, the combat strength of the Crimson Rock Army is not as good as before. Let's not talk about the advanced divine masters. Just the divine masters. There are still a few people in the Crimson Rock army formed by peak divine masters. They can't compare to the Heavenly Void army at all. The Heavenly Void army rarely makes a move in the Heavenly Void realm, even on a small scale. However, according to the information I got this time, the Heavenly Void army has made a huge ruckus. Half of the 2,000-man army seems to have gathered. A 1,000-man Heavenly Void army can't be here to deal with the internal changes in the Heavenly Void realm. It must be for a war. Considering the arrival of Marquis of 3 the Heavenly Void army is most likely coming for our Pill Sun sacred world. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang and Palace Master Xizhan's expressions became unusually heavy. The Heavenly Void army's combat strength was too terrifying. Even if half of the 2,000-man army had come, there would still be over 100 great divine masters. If such an army came to the Pill Sun sacred world and was personally led by the Marquis of 3 it would be impossible to wipe out the current Pill Sun sacred world. It was not impossible. What should we do? Palace Master Xizhan was extremely anxious and immediately thought of a countermeasure. What should come will come, and there's nothing we can do to change it. Now, we can only think of a way to deal with the Heavenly Void army. Yunshan narrowed his eyes. Right? Insuer nodded. Actually, we are already considered lucky. Fortunately, Mr. Sword One was strong enough to get rid of the Marquis of 3 The Marquis of 3 probably knows that he can't do anything to Sword One. Once he attacks, Sword One can completely stop him, which is why he asked the Heavenly Void Palace Master to gather the Heavenly Void army. If Sword One did not stop the Marquis of 3 the Marquis of 3 would have killed all the higher-ups of our Crimson Rock Castle with his own strength. However, he only needed to bring people to take over the territory of our Pill Sun sacred world. And now, even though the Heavenly Void army is extremely powerful, it will still take some time to gather them. Our Pill Sun sacred world still has some time to prepare. As long as we think of a way to unite all the factions and experts of the Pill Sun sacred world, we might have a chance of winning even if we fight the Heavenly Void army head-on. That's true. But after so many years of internal strife in the sacred Pill Sun world, Crimson Rock Castle's prestige toward the experts of various factions has long since fallen. Although Crimson Rock Castle has regained control of everything, it's easier said than done to unite all the experts of those factions within a short period of time. Yunshan frowned. It's not easy, but it's the only way. No matter what, we have to do our best to fight for it. Even if we have to pay a big price for it, we won't hesitate. Insuer said in a low voice. Then she looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword One, I'm afraid we'll have to rely on you and the Sword Alliance in this crisis. I hope you can help us. Insuer was very sincere. She really needed Jian Wushuang and the Sword Alliance. Especially Jian Wushuang. Without him, no one in the Pill Sun sacred world could compete with the Marquis of 3 Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and did not refuse. Soon, Jian Wushuang left the Crimson Rock Castle. But after leaving Crimson Rock Castle, his heart was heavy. Heavenly Void Palace, Heavenly Void Army. Even Jian Wushuang felt a great pressure when he learned of the strength of the Heavenly Void Army and knew that they were gathering to attack the Pill Sun sacred world. Yunshan is right. Although Crimson Rock Castle has regained control of everything in the Pill Sun sacred world, its prestige has long been lost. It will not be easy to regain it in a short time. Even if the entire Pill Sun sacred world is in danger, Crimson Rock Castle will not be able to gather many experts to participate in the battle. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. To the many factions of the Pill Sun sacred world, including many solitary experts, it did not matter much whether the Pill Sun sacred world was annexed or not. Even if the Pill Sun sacred world was annexed by the Heavenly Void world, it would only change its name. It would not affect the interests of the experts of these factions, especially the 4 top factions. They were currently being forced by the Crimson Rock Castle to a miserable state. Many experts of their own were working under the Crimson Rock Castle, suffering unspeakably. At this moment, they hoped that the Heavenly Void Palace would attack them so that they could regroup. It seems that Crimson Rock Castle has encountered a real crisis. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, but he began to hesitate. He was hesitating whether he should help Crimson Rock Castle to solve this crisis. To be honest, he did not have any feelings for the Crimson Rock Castle, nor did he have much sense of belonging to the Pilsun sacred world. The reason why he had helped Crimson Rock Castle and Xianxia was pure because of the agreement he had made with Crimson Rock Saint. However, he had already done a lot to help Xianxia obtain victory in the battle and allow her to perfectly control the Pilsun sacred world. Its value had already surpassed that of a heaven-sealing scroll. Therefore, even if he did not care about Crimson Rock Castle now, he could just leave, he could feel at ease. However, Jian Wushuang was not the kind of person who would give up a burden so easily. A good man does what he has to do. Back then, Saint Crimson Rock gave me a scroll of the heaven-sealing map to help Xianxia solve the crisis and stabilize Crimson Rock Castle and the Pilsun sacred world. Now, I have only done half of it. Although what I have done far exceeds the value of a scroll of the heaven-sealing map, since I have agreed to it, I have to complete it even if I have to suffer a little loss. What's more, the Crimson Rock Saint gave me a heaven-cleaving token, asking me to help Xianxia break through to the Immortal Saint realm. If I don't care about this and let her die, then I'll get the heaven-cleaving token for nothing. It doesn't conform to my principles. Jian Wushuang pondered, but he had already made a decision in his heart. The Heavenly Void Army was coming. He would try his best to help Xianxia in this crisis. The Heavenly Void Army is too powerful, and Marquis of 3 is in charge. With the help of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Alliance, even if we gather a group of experts in the Pilsun sacred world, we won't be able to fight the Heavenly Void Army head-on. If I want to help Xianxia solve this crisis, there's only one way. Phew! I have to go there again. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and immediately set off. A dense ancient forest filled with a large amount of gray fog and a gloomy and mysterious aura. This was the infamous boneyard on the Pilsun continent. There were countless dangers here, and very few people dared to venture here. However, Jian Wushuang knew that there was a big secret hidden in the bone burial ground. The secret realm of heaven and earth created by a rule master was hidden in the bone burial ground. The bone burial ground was extremely dangerous, but with Jian Wushuang's current strength, as long as he did not enter the deepest and most dangerous place, it was not too risky. Jian Wushuang continued his journey. Before long, he arrived at an inconspicuous small valley. Here I am again. Jian Wushuang looked at the valley in front of him, but a faint smile appeared on his face. He knew that this valley was the entrance to the secret realm. Jian Wushuang flipped his palm, and a black sword appeared in his hand. The black sword was originally divided into 6 parts. Previously, Jian Wushuang and his group of 6 went to the secret realm together, and each of them had a broken sword. The 6 broken swords were the complete keepsake to open the secret realm. However, Jian Wushuang was the only one who survived the adventure in the secret realm. Other than the winged god who died in the cemetery, all the treasures of the remaining 5 people fell into Jian Wushuang's hands. Naturally, the broken sword in their hands was also included. The broken sword in the winged god's hand was also given to him by Spirit Valley Elder when Jian Wushuang left the secret realm. Therefore, Jian Wushuang now had a complete keepsake, so he could easily open the secret realm. At this moment, as Jian Wushuang took out the complete keepsake, a unique aura spread from the black sword's body. Buzz buzz. The valley in front of him trembled slightly under this unique aura. Then, a space passage slowly appeared in the void in the center. This space passage was extremely dark and mysterious. It was impossible to know what was at the other end of the passage with the naked eye. However, Jian Wushuang had been here once before, so he was very familiar with it. Without any hesitation, Jian Wushuang leaped and directly entered the space passage. Light flashed, and when he appeared again, Jian Wushuang had already arrived in a huge dark void. This dark void was boundless, and there was not a trace of light. Jian Wushuang sped up and directly rushed toward the end of the dark void in front of him, which was the depths of this secret realm. There were many dangerous places in the secret realm, but these places were determined by the strength of the cultivator. Jian Wushuang was only a divine master, so the danger he encountered was naturally only for divine masters. He kept moving forward. With his current strength, he easily passed through the first and second dangerous places. Even in the third danger zone, which was in the cemetery, Jian Wushuang encountered many corpse puppets along the way. Some golden-armored corpse puppets even appeared, but they were all easily taken care of by Jian Wushuang. Soon, Jian Wushuang arrived at the core of the secret realm, where the invincible immortal saints and the bodies of the two rule masters were located. When he arrived, buzz! A strange light suddenly condensed in front of Jian Wushuang. The light was gray and gradually condensed into a human figure. It was a simple-looking gray-robed elder. He was Elder Gu, the spirit of the secret realm. "Greetings, Elder Gu." Jian Wushuang immediately bowed humbly when he saw him. "Little guy, you're here again." With his hands behind his back, Elder Gu fixed his indifferent eyes on Jian Wushuang. "Before you left, I told you to come back after you broke through to become an immortal saint. But now, you're obviously far from becoming an immortal saint." "I did, but this time my world has encountered a great crisis. I have no choice but to come here again. I want to ask for your help, Elder Gu," Jian Wushuang said. "You want me to help you?" Elder Gu could not help but smile. "Little guy, are you mistaken? I'm just a spirit of the secret realm. I can't leave this secret realm, so how can I help you?" "Yes," Jian Wushuang said. "I know you control everything in this secret realm. Like the cemetery I walked through before, those corpse puppets are also under your control. I came here this time to ask for some corpse puppets from you, so that I can fight for my world." "Is that so?" Elder Gu asked. "I do have corpse puppets, but they were refined by my master when he was alive. They are all my master's things. I have been guarding this secret realm according to my master's instructions. Everything has to be done according to the rules. If you want to get the treasures in this secret realm, you have to pass the corresponding tests, even for these insignificant corpse puppets." "I know. But what kind of test do I need to pass to get these corpse puppets?" Jian Wushuang asked directly. "If it's a test," Elder Gu began to ponder. After a moment, he spoke again. "Master has left many tests in this secret realm, but most of them are aimed at the immortal saint and above. You are only a divine master after all. The chances of you passing even the simplest test left by master are very slim. Moreover, these tests are life and death tests. If you are careless, you will be doomed. Therefore, I advise you not to try." "Is the probability of passing very low?" Jian Wushuang frowned, but then he said seriously, "Time is tight, and I can't think of any other way to resolve this crisis. I have no choice but to try." "Are you really going to try?" Elder Gu narrowed his eyes. "Suhan, it's not that I look down on you, but master's methods are far beyond your imagination. The simplest test he left is aimed at the soul. If you are not careful, your soul will be completely destroyed. If you don't listen to my advice and try, the probability of you getting out of the test is much lower than 10%. Elder Gu obviously had some expectations for Jian Wushuang, so he did not want Jian Wushuang to choose this road that was close to death. His words were also obviously with an air of persuasion. However, he did not know that his persuasion made Jian Wushuang even more determined. "A test on the soul?" Jian Wushuang smiled in his heart. "Elder Gu, I have decided to accept this test. Since you're so determined, I won't force you." Elder Gu waved his hand and a space passage appeared in the void. "This space passage leads to the place where you'll be tested. You can accept the test as long as you can endure the test for 6 hours. If you don't die after 6 hours, you'll pass. Take care of yourself." Elder Gu sighed. Jian Wushuang bowed slightly to Elder Gu and then stepped into the space passage without any hesitation. Seeing Jian Wushuang enter the space passage, Elder Gu shook his head secretly. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang should not be able to pass this test. However, since Jian Wushuang wanted to hold on, he could not stop him. "I hope this little guy is lucky." Elder Gu could only think so. After entering the space passage, Jian Wushuang directly appeared in a dark void. The dark void was boundless, just like the dark void where Elder Gu had asked him to compete with the Saber Master and the others for the universe. As soon as Jian Wushuang entered the dark void, he did not have time to check his surroundings. Boom! A strong soul power surged up crazily. The soul power was extremely powerful. It suddenly appeared in the dark void and was almost solid. In an instant, a huge soul storm took shape in the dark void. The soul storm was still expanding at an alarming speed. What's this? Looking at the soul storm in front of him, Jian Wushuang's pupils constricted. He was about to dodge, but he found that the same soul power had burst out in several places nearby, forming the same soul storm. The soul storm appeared in every corner around him, completely blocking his escape route, leaving him no room to escape. As the soul storm continued to expand, Jian Wushuang was instantly sucked into the soul storm. Rumble. As soon as he fell into the storm, a large amount of soul power immediately rushed toward him crazily. The soul power from all directions poured into his mind and crazily rushed toward the material soul in his sea of consciousness. It's a soul attack, and it's a continuous soul attack. Jian Wushuang's face was solemn. When he sensed the soul power rushing toward him, a purple bell immediately rose from the surface of his body. The purple emperor bell was not only a protective treasure, but it also had a certain defensive effect against soul attacks. Now, the power of the surrounding soul power was greatly weakened after passing through the purple emperor bell. After being weakened by the purple emperor bell, the remaining power entered Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness and was blocked by the exquisite pagoda. The defense ability of the exquisite pagoda against Jian Wushuang's soul was more than 10 times stronger than the purple emperor bell. The impact of the soul power on the exquisite pagoda was like a drop of water dropping into the sea, without causing too much of a ripple. Even if the soul power continued to attack, the exquisite pagoda could easily withstand it. Is this the extent of the soul test? Jian Wushuang muttered, but his expression suddenly changed. No, it's not that simple. The soul power is getting stronger. Yes, the crazy soul power is getting stronger. Jian Wushuang had already sensed it. As time passed, the spiritual power was getting stronger and stronger. Previously, the spiritual power was weakened by the purple emperor bell and then rushed to the exquisite pagoda, so it could not cause too much of a stir. However, in just 15 minutes, the spiritual power was also coming through the purple emperor bell. It was enough to cause the exquisite pagoda to tremble slightly. An hour later, the exquisite pagoda was trembling crazily, and it was even on the verge of collapsing. Oh no! Jian Wushuang's face turned ugly. The exquisite pagoda was his strongest soul defense method. Once the exquisite pagoda collapsed, the soul power could recklessly attack his physical soul, which was only at the level of an ordinary first-grade great divine master. Although his soul was much stronger than his peers because he had lived 2 lives and was a perfect chaotic creature, he could not withstand the continuous soul attack. Bang! Finally, under the continuous soul attack, the exquisite pagoda in Jian Wushuang's spiritual sea completely collapsed. Once the exquisite pagoda collapsed, the continuous soul power directly attacked Jian Wushuang's physical soul. Humph! Jian Wushuang let out a muffled groan, but he began to rely on his physical soul to resist the soul power. However, it was obviously very difficult to resist. Outside the dark void, Elder Gu stood quietly with his hands behind his back, his eyes extremely turbid. Although he was not in the dark void, he clearly saw what happened in the dark void. Elder Gu shook his head when he saw that Jian Wushuang's soul defense had collapsed, and he could only rely on his own soul to resist the soul attack. After all, this is a test left by my master. Although it's the simplest and easiest to pass it, one must have a soul that is infinitely close to that of the immortal saint and has a powerful soul defense technique. His soul must be extremely tough and can withstand the wear and tear. As for him, his soul defense ability is not weak, but his own soul level is too low. He is only a junior great divine master, but he is still far from being a senior great divine master. Even though his soul is extremely tough, it will be completely crushed under the continuous impact of the soul power. What a pity for such a genius! Elder Gu sighed secretly. He felt that it was not worth it for Jian Wushuang and felt that it was a pity. The last time Jian Wushuang came to this secret realm with the Saber Master and the others, he saw that Jian Wushuang was extremely talented and had big secrets. He was also very curious about Jian Wushuang and looked forward to his growth. Therefore, before Jian Wushuang left, he specifically told Jian Wushuang to come to this secret realm again when he broke through to become an immortal saint. But now, with great talent and promise, he is determined to try the test his master left behind. As a result, he is dead for sure. It's only a matter of time, the old man said to himself. In the dark void, as time went by, Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the soul storm, found it harder and harder to resist the soul attack. His real soul, under the impact of the soul power, became weaker and weaker. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. However, Elder Gu had said that Jian Wushuang would last 6 hours in the test space. Now, only 1/3 of the time had passed, but Jian Wushuang was obviously unable to hold on any longer. Buzz. The physical soul in Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness became weaker and weaker. Finally, there was no room for struggle. In just a moment, Jian Wushuang's physical soul completely collapsed. Is he dead? 2 hours. Elder Gu shook his head secretly. He had already seen Jian Wushuang's soul completely destroyed. Under such circumstances, even those immortal saints with immortal bodies were doomed to die. Elder Gu naturally thought that Jian Wushuang was already dead. He was ready to withdraw from this test. But suddenly, in the boundless dark space, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes with a solemn expression. In his sea of consciousness, the substantial soul, which had been completely destroyed, condensed again at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, it was condensed again. An intact substantial soul appeared there again. At the same time, it started to resist the soul attack again. What? Even Elder Gu was shocked when he saw this scene. His eyes were wide open. He didn't die? His soul was clearly completely annihilated. How could he not die? Not only did he not die, but his soul was also completely restored? How is this possible? Elder Gu could not believe what he was seeing. He was the spirit of the secret realm, and his master was a high and mighty master of laws. His knowledge was also vast. He knew many strange things in the absolute beginning divine realm. Logically, nothing could make him lose his composure like this. However, this scene really shocked him. A cultivator's soul was completely annihilated. How could he not die? He even recovered in the blink of an eye? How was this possible? Impossible! Impossible! Although the absolute beginning divine realm is vast and has countless experts, when I followed my master to battle, I saw many world-shaking super experts. However, those experts used their souls as the core. If their souls weren't destroyed, they wouldn't die. If their souls were completely annihilated, unless someone used a heaven-defying method to reverse time and space, they would be resurrected. But this man, he didn't need any means, let alone the so-called reversal of time and space. He just casually recovered the soul that had been annihilated. Elder Gu was completely stunned. This was normal because he had indeed seen something impossible. This was completely against the common sense of the heavenly axiom and was unreasonable. But it had indeed happened. After Jian Wushuang's real soul recovered in the boundless dark void, he continued to resist the soul attack. At this moment, a faint smile appeared on Jian Wushuang's face. I heard from Elder Gu that this test is aimed at the soul, so I knew that I could pass this test. Now, it seems that it's not very likely, but I can definitely pass it, Jian Wushuang muttered. The test aimed at the soul, to put it bluntly. He had to find a way to resist the soul attack that had always existed. The soul attack was indeed potent and was getting stronger. It was almost impossible for a divine master, even an invincible divine master, to pass the test. However, it was not difficult for Jian Wushuang. Yes, he could not resist the soul attack forever, but he did not need to resist it. Even if the soul attack destroyed his physical soul, he could rely on his divine power to recover it completely in the next moment. Then, he could continue to rely on his physical soul to block it. After repeating this process, to him, it was nothing more than the consumption of divine power. However, his divine power was vast and boundless. The divine power used to recover his physical soul was nothing compared to his vast divine power, let alone recovering once or twice. Even if he recovered dozens of times, it was nothing to him. He only needed to stay in this space for 6 hours, and he could easily survive it. Although the soul impact can't do anything to me, it does suppress my soul. So it's just right to temper my soul strength. Jian Wushuang smiled and began to use the soul impact. He continued to temper his soul strength. Time continued to pass. Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed for the second time, but he immediately recovered and resisted the soul impact. Recovered again? Elder Gu, outside the void, saw this scene, and his expression was exciting. Monster. This kid is definitely a monster. No, he can't be called a monster. No matter how powerful a monster is, it is still within the common sense of the heavenly axiom. However, this kid has completely defied the common sense of the heavenly axiom. Therefore, he can't be described as a monster. He should be called an outlier. Yes, it's an outlier of the heavenly axiom. It's filled with the heavenly axiom. Therefore, it shouldn't exist. Elder Gu roared, his voice hoarse. In the dark void, Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed twice, thrice, and then restored. After 6 hours, Jian Wushuang's soul had been destroyed 7 times. He also recovered 7 times. Finally, after 6 hours, the continuous soul impact in the surroundings completely dissipated. Is it over? Jian Wushuang stood in the dark void and felt the retreat of the surrounding space-time impact, but he felt a little regretful. He actually wanted to stay under the soul impact for a while longer. Anyway, the soul impact could not do anything to him. Instead, it gave him soul power, which had a great tempering effect. In these 6 hours, he clearly felt that his soul strength had increased a lot. Unfortunately, now that the test was over, the soul impact was gone. Buzz! The void slightly twisted, and a space passage appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Along the space passage, Jian Wushuang appeared in the cemetery again, in front of Elder Gu. Seeing Elder Gu again, Jian Wushuang found that Elder Gu's expression was quite interesting. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was not surprised. He knew that Elder Gu should have seen his performance in the dark void just now. Although, naturally, he also saw his physical soul being destroyed again and again, which was against the common sense of heaven. It would be strange if Elder Gu were not surprised. Su-Han, I'm more and more curious about what kind of big secret you have. Elder Gu stared at Jian Wushuang with a bright light in his eyes. I do have a secret, but even if you know it, it won't be of any use to you or even your master. On the contrary, it might even bring disaster. Believe me, I'm not lying, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang deeply, but he did not deny it. He knew that if Jian Wushuang could do such a thing that went against the laws of nature, he must have a world-shaking secret. Even if his master were still alive, let alone the spirit of the secret realm, even a rule master would not be able to come into contact with such a secret. Such a big secret must have involved the highest level of the divine beginning world. Those who were qualified to participate must be super experts at the level of Saint Realm Masters. No wonder you dared to take this test before. It turns out that you have a lot of confidence in yourself, Elder Gu said. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not comment. If it were anyone else, they would have given up when they heard Elder Gu's kind advice and knew that the test was so difficult and that there was a high chance of them dying. However, Jian Wushuang was different. He was too confident in his ability. As a perfect chaotic creature with a perfect immortal body, it was not easy to kill him. Not to mention that it was only a test left by a rule master. Even if the rule master who created this secret realm were still alive and standing in front of Jian Wushuang, he would not be able to kill Jian Wushuang. At most, he could suppress him while he was still alive. Because of this, Jian Wushuang was not afraid at all, because he knew that he would not die in this test. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Elder Gu waved his hand. You survived for 6 hours in that space. Although you used an unusual method, you did pass the test. Therefore, according to the agreement, I can give you some of the corpse puppets in this secret realm. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up immediately. Thank you, Elder Gu. Wait here for a while. Then, I'll go and prepare them for you, Elder Gu said. But his figure disappeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry. He just waited here quietly. Not long after, Elder Gu appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again. I've checked carefully. There are only a few corpse puppets left in the secret realm, except for those who must stay in the secret realm to stop the cultivators, Elder Gu said. Not many? How many? Jian Wushuang asked. I tried my best to select 100 corpse puppets for you. I don't know if I can help you, Elder Gu said. 100. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. Look! Elder Gu waved his hand and streams of flowing light shot out. They appeared in the surrounding void and condensed into ice-cold figures. These figures were all dead. There were a total of 100 corpse puppets standing in the surrounding void. Jian Wushuang immediately looked around. These corpse puppets were no different from the ones Jian Wushuang had seen before. They were all copper-armored, silver-armored, and gold-armored corpse puppets. More than half of the copper-armored corpse puppets had the battle strength of an ordinary advanced divine master. There were more than 60 copper-armored corpse puppets in the surrounding 100 corpse puppets. There were 30 silver-armored corpse puppets with the battle strength of an advanced divine master. The remaining 10 were gold-armored corpse puppets. 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, 30 silver-armored corpse puppets, and 60 bronze-armored corpse puppets. Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. 100 corpse puppets meant 100 great divine masters' battle strength. The weakest among them was an advanced great divine master, and there were 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, which was the battle strength of a peak great divine master. All of them added together, this was a powerful corpse puppet army. Yes, it was a corpse puppet army. There are 200 great divine masters in the Heaven Void Temple's army of 2,000 people. However, their strength is uneven. I'm afraid that many of them are elementary great divine masters, and there are definitely a few advanced great divine masters. As for peak great divine masters, there must be even fewer. This time, only half of the Heavenly Void Palace army, or 100 great divine masters, gathered under the orders of the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The corpse puppet army standing in front of me now also has 100 great divine masters. Their numbers are equal, but in terms of quality, the corpse puppet army clearly has the absolute advantage. With the corpse puppet army in hand and the strength of Crimson Rock Castle and our Sword Alliance, our camp will definitely have the absolute advantage if we fight against the Heavenly Void army now. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, but he was pleasantly surprised. At this time, Elder Gu looked at him again and asked, Su-Han, are you satisfied with the 100 corpse puppets? Yes, very satisfied. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, in fact, these corpse puppets are nothing. They are just small things that Master refined when he was alive. Master could refine saint-level corpse puppets when he was alive, but unfortunately, there are not many of them left in this secret realm. I can't give you saint-level corpse puppets, but I have one corpse puppet with me, so I can give it to you, Elder Gu said. There's another one? Jian Wushuang looked at Elder Gu in surprise. Elder Gu smiled mysteriously and waved his hand again. In an instant, a streak of blood-red light shot out. In front of Jian Wushuang, a corpse puppet in blood-red armor with skin that looked like it was made of blood appeared. This corpse puppet was also lifeless. Since it had not attacked, Jian Wushuang could not immediately determine its strength. Elder Gu, what is this? Jian Wushuang could only ask. It's above the golden-armored corpse puppet. The blood-armored corpse puppet is also a corpse puppet at the Divine Master level. However, among Divine Masters, the blood-armored corpse puppet is invincible. Elder Gu said, Invincible among Divine Masters? Invincible Divine Master. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Yes, according to the realm of the primordial divine world, his battle strength is comparable to that of the extremely rare invincible divine master, Elder Gu said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. With the army of corpse puppets formed by 100 corpse puppets, he was confident that he could fight against the Heaven Void army. The only problem was the invincible divine master of the Marquis of 3-een. He had been unable to find a way to fight against Marquis 3-een, but now Elder Gu had given him a higher-level blood-armored corpse puppet that was comparable to the invincible divine master. How could he not be surprised? Thank you, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and thanked Elder Gu immediately. You're welcome. You deserve all the tests that your master left for you, and they're just some corpse puppets. They're nothing to the numerous opportunities in this secret realm, Elder Gu said with a faint smile. But then he continued to look at Jian Wushuang. Su Han, I can give you another treasure in addition to these corpse puppets. That treasure should be of great use to you, but you have to agree to one condition. Jian Wushuang was stunned and looked at him subconsciously. What's the treasure that's of great use to me? I can show it to you first. Elder Gu smiled, but with a flip of his hand, a dark green jade bottle appeared in his hand. He opened the cork of the bottle and immediately a green elixir the size of an adult thumb appeared in Elder Gu's hand. This is an elixir? Jian Wushuang's expression changed as he stared at the green elixir. He did not know this elixir, but since it was made by Elder Gu, it was definitely not an ordinary item. However, Jian Wushuang did not know what effect it could have on him. Have you heard of the Saint Ascension elixir? Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. Saint Ascension elixir? Jian Wushuang was stunned and subconsciously shook his head. He had never studied alchemy. All he knew was some widely known elixirs in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. As for this Saint Ascension elixir, he had never heard of it. It's normal that you don't know. This Saint Ascension elixir is located in the center of the absolute beginning divine realm. It is quite famous in the 3rd sky of your realm. However, outside the 3rd sky, in this remote territory of yours, this Saint Ascension elixir should only belong to the legends. Naturally, not many people know about it. Elder Gu smiled faintly. It doesn't matter if you haven't heard about it. I can tell you about its effects now. Jian Wushuang listened carefully. As its name suggests, the Saint Ascension elixir is an elixir that leads to the path of a saint. Its effects are actually similar to the royal gold core of a divine master. The royal gold core can help a divine master breakthrough to become a great divine master, and it can help a great divine master break through his own realm. The Saint Ascension elixir can help a peak great divine master who has been stuck at a bottleneck for a long time breakthrough to the level of an immortal saint. Just as Elder Gu said this, Jian Wushuang's eyes widened. Help a peak great divine master breakthrough to the immortal saint level? That was the immortal saint level. What's the chance? Jian Wushuang immediately asked. 10%, Elder Gu said. Of course, for those ordinary divine masters who are unprepared, they still have a 10% chance of breaking through to the immortal saint level after taking the Saint Ascension elixir. But for those powerful divine masters who are well prepared and have great potential, there's at least a 30% chance of breaking through to the immortal saint level after taking the Saint Ascension elixir. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was even more shocked. Without any preparation, there was a 10% chance of a breakthrough. With sufficient preparation, there was a 30% chance of a breakthrough? A 30% chance. After all, the Aurus core of the royal realm could make a senior great divine master breakthrough to be a peak great divine master, which was also very small. Even so, it was enough to make many great divine masters fight for it and even kill each other. For example, Elder Tong and Ba Xiong, who had been killed by Jian Wushuang, had directly broken through to be a peak great divine master by taking a gold core of the royal realm. A gold core of the royal realm was worth at least 100 times or even 1,000 times more than just normal cultivation. Jian Wushuang had no doubt that once the news of the gold core of the royal realm spread, the entire Pill Sun sacred world and even the entire Golden Crow 9 realms would be shocked. Countless great divine masters and top experts would fight for the elixir at all costs. Even an invincible divine master like the Marquis of 3 would not be able to resist the temptation of the elixir, let alone a peak great divine master. After all, it was too difficult for an ordinary peak great divine master to break through to become an immortal saint. Take the Pill Sun sacred world as an example. The vast sacred world had an incomparably vast territory, but after so many years, the Pill Sun sacred world had given birth to an undying sage, and that was the Crimson Rock Sage. However, there were quite a few experts at the great deity level in the Pill Sun sacred world. There were even some peak great deity level experts, but they were unable to truly break through to become an undying sage. However, it was difficult to break through to become an undying sage. And once an elixir with a 30% chance of breaking through was placed in front of these great divine masters, it would be strange if these great divine masters did not go crazy. Su-Han, your talent is extremely high. Although you haven't reached the peak great divine master level yet, you'll reach it sooner or later. At that time, you'll probably encounter a bottleneck. Even if you can break through, it'll definitely take a long time. And this sacred elixir will help you when the time comes. With your talent and skills, as long as you've accumulated enough divine power, you'll have at least a 50% chance of becoming an immortal saint with the help of the elixir. Elder Gu smiled. I can give you the pill now, but you have to agree to one condition. What condition? Jian Wushuang asked. It's simple. I want you to agree to it. To be exact, I want you to swear that if you break through to the immortal saint level, you will come to the secret realm and try your best to accept the test left by the master and get the mantle left by the master. How about that? Elder Gu said. That's the condition? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He had thought that Elder Gu would make such a harsh condition. But it turned out that he just wanted him to try his best to accept the test left by the master of the secret realm. In fact, even if Elder Gu did not say anything, Jian Wushuang would definitely come back to the secret realm after he broke through to become an immortal saint. After all, this secret realm was left by a powerful rule master and contained endless opportunities. Jian Wushuang also had a certain yearning for opportunities in this secret realm. I agree to this condition. I can swear it now. Jian Wushuang made an oath right in front of Elder Gu. Of course, this oath was not very binding for Jian Wushuang. Even if he broke it later, there would be no harm. However, given Jian Wushuang's character, since he made an oath, he would definitely do his best to fulfill it. Seeing Jian Wushuang make an oath, Elder Gu could not help but smile. Then he waved his hand and handed the Saint Ascension elixir directly to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang carefully put the Saint Ascension elixir into his interspatial ring. But he was delighted. Elder Gu was wrong. The Saint Ascension elixir had some effect on Jian Wushuang, but it was not very useful. He had no choice. He was a perfect chaotic creature, and every breakthrough in his realm was different from ordinary people. For other great divine masters, the gold core of the royal realm was the best elixir for breaking through their own realm, but it was of little use to Jian Wushuang. That was why he had not swallowed any of the 5 royal gold cores he had obtained in the secret realm. Instead, he had used them to recruit experts. If the royal gold core was like that, then the Saint Ascension elixir was the same. Jian Wushuang knew very well that even if he successfully reached the level of a peak great divine master and his divine power had reached the peak, he would not be able to break through with just a Saint Ascension elixir. The Saint Ascension elixir could at most help him or promote him. However, Jian Wushuang was still quite happy. After all, he did not need the Saint Ascension elixir, but others could. Moreover, Jian Wushuang already had a suitable candidate in his heart. It was Yin Suer. I promised St. Crimson Rock that I would try my best to help Yin Suer break through her realm and make her an immortal saint, but it's easier said than done. I can't really help her. But now, I'm giving her the Saint Ascension elixir, which is the best way to help her. As for whether she can make a breakthrough to become an immortal saint, it depends on her own luck. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Thank you, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang thanked Elder Gu. Then he refined the corpse puppets one by one, put them into his interspatial ring, and left the secret realm with the corpse puppet army. The second time he entered the secret realm, Jian Wushuang had gained a lot. He had obtained the corpse puppet army, a Saint Ascension elixir, and his soul power had also been tempered. With the corpse puppet army and the combined power of the Pill Sun Sacred World, I should be able to fight the Heavenly Void army head-on and even gain the upper hand. Moreover, with the existence of the blood-armored corpse puppet, I'm not afraid of the Marquis of 3 However, my own strength is still inferior. Since the Heavenly Void army hasn't arrived yet, I have to improve my strength as much as possible. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. There were only 2 ways for him to improve his strength.